The return of Bounty Hunter and the introduction of Desert Treasure 2 are the most highly anticipated updates of old school RuneScape's history, and I'm here to make a ramble video to tell you why. All right, so as I was saying, Bounty Hunter and Desert Treasure 2 are definitely going to be the most impactful updates for PvP specifically that old school RuneScape has ever seen. Um, when it comes to like Zerk PKing and pure PKing, what we've really had over the last couple years, ever since Bounty Hunter rewards were taken away and the minigame basically died off, is PKing around the Grand Exchange or, trying to venture out to the Rev Caves in 20 plus Wild where a max med level jumps on you like 90% of the time. So Zerker and Pure PKing has been pretty much crap for, what is it, almost 3 years now? More than that with the previous less than optimal versions of Bounty Hunter. Um, so these updates are absolutely insane. When I'm talking about Desert Treasure 2, I'm mainly talking about the new prayers coming out, which are the Ruinous Powers. Um, so I know a lot of other people have made Ramble videos on this, so this is going to be, I guess, my take on it. So this is definitely not going to be like a very visually like stimulating video. I'm just going to be talking about shit and try to make this as short and to the point as possible. So what I wanted to do is go over all the different blogs that have come out for Bounty Hunter over the last couple months. It was, I guess, these things were revealed during the Winter Summit, which was in like mid-December in 2022. So it's been about 4.5 months since that, and Bounty Hunter was said, they were going to implement that update by the end of the spring in 2023. So if we're being like technical about that, right, that goes into June, but I'm really hoping they can get it out before that. So just to recap, what they've done so far is they had like this initial bounty hunters coming back type blog in late February. They had a rewards beta that launched about a month ago, and at the end of March, that had a bunch of different rewards they wanted to test out. I'll get to those in a minute. And then they actually just started polling what those rewards, well, whether or not those rewards should actually, come into the game. That poll opened up only 3 days ago on April 25th. So all this stuff is relatively recent, and we're kind of like, right in the mix of things right now. So I want to cover a bit about Bounty Hunter first, and then I want to talk about the Ruinous Powers, which is the proposed new prayer book. Um, Again, the Ruinous Powers are very much like in flux right now. They're under revision. They've been beta tested, but a lot of people said they need change, and I definitely agree with that. Um, but what people can't seem to agree about is what exactly needs changed. But I mean, that's what I'm here to talk about. And honestly, I just love talking about this shit. Okay, so talking about Bounty Hunter first. So I want to go through each of these blogs and I guess just go over the highlights and just, I don't know, make sure everybody is as informed as possible about what is coming out, why they're proposing it, or I guess why I think they're proposing it to be the way they are, and just to share some personal thoughts on it. So, quick background on me. I mean, if you don't follow my channel very closely, which let's be real, I don't have a very big channel. Um, I just want to just get everyone on the same page. I'm like a huge bounty hunter PKer. Um, I had Gosh, I'm not trying to flex right now because it's not that impressive to be honest, but I think I had like 3,000 to 3,500 target kills across like two of my accounts. And before you say, "Oh, that's not that impressive," I play like 2 to 3 hours a week, so like I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at right now. Okay, like don't judge me. I'm just trying to say like I know what I'm talking about. I've played the minigame to death, and that's literally the reason I even played the game. Okay, like everything I do is for like edge style PvP. I got pretty good at NHing once they took Bounty Hunter away because like the most fast action PvP you could find is just LMS. So I just did that. Like I just did that to death, and I got pretty good at it. But I play this game for edge style PvP. So like this is my thing. Um, I don't know how else to say that. This is my thing. I think I know what I'm talking about. But again, this is a ramble video, just my take on everything. You don't have to agree with everything I say. All right, so let's go through this. So, right, they say, okay, Bounty Hunter's back. Um, they announced during the Winter Summit. The idea of Bounty Hunter is pretty similar. You go in there, some confined space, essentially. You get assigned to kill a specific target, and then you get rewarded if you're successful in doing that. Really super, super simple concept, something I used to love doing. If you knew the person was better than you, you just had some incentive to at least try because you got some extra reward out of it beyond just the loot from the other player. So, I don't know, just something about the simple aspect, fighting someone that's your level, your combat level. There's just something good about that. Okay, so they're saying, okay, we want to bring it back. Just some survey at the end of this. I'm not going to take that again, but um, they're going through what are their major design pillars and, you know, just explaining what they want to do. So, recapture and revitalize edge style PvP. So, if you just started playing the game in the last couple of years, like, what the hell is edge style PvP? Yeah, edge as in like Edgeville, where one versus one PKing without overhead protection prayers used to happen all the time. Hasn't happened there in like 3 years, ever since they again nerfed the hell to the bounty hunter rewards and basically removed all of them that are worth any money. Uh, and that's kind of where we're at right now with Target Worlds. So strapped a big old auto skull on there just because, and yeah, they're basically just used for trading in emblems from the Rev caves and using a blooded Vestal's longsword, which I'm not going to get into how stupid those mechanics are. But anyways, um, yeah, they want to revitalize and recapture edge style PvP. Um, they go and make a point to say, it's honor PvP. So just the main difference is there are like these unsaid rules where, right, you're not supposed to freeze your opponent, you're not supposed to use overhead protection, you're not supposed to teleblock them. There are like these unsaid rules, and this used to be, kind of enforced by the fact that you were so close to a safe zone, fighting along the Edgeville ditch, where if someone was fighting a way that you didn't like, you could just run to safety. So that's kind of how that style of PKing came to be. It's really simple. If you don't like how someone's fighting, you can just step out. So that's kind of how that came to be. It was really enforced by the environment that those fights took place in, rather than, I guess, anything else. So, anyways, the second, I guess, design pillar that they're going for is quick matchmaking. So, allowing players to be assigned targets with similar combat levels. I mean, this is the biggest thing. Like constant action with people that are your level. Um, that is the biggest thing. So I can't tell you how frustrating it is trying to get fights with other PKers around like Rev Caves or something. If you're a pure or a Zerker around Rev Caves, first of all, it's in 20 Wild. It's not necessarily supposed to be a fair fight if you're in 20 Wilderness. It's kind of hard to enforce that. And around the Grand Exchange, like you can try to find people your level. Um, Reality is some combat brackets are just absolutely dead, so you just have to settle on fighting people like 10 above you. Because let's be real, if you try to fight people 10 below you, they're going to say no. But then they're going to go ask someone 10 below them if they want to fight. But anyways, yeah. So fights with people in your tight combat bracket, like plus or minus five, that's how it used to be. Um, is kind of what they're trying to do. The exact range is not totally set in stone. That's something they ask about, but that's what they're trying to do. And then unique and attractive rewards. So, of course, if you participate in this and kill your target, there has to be some incentive to kill your target specifically, as opposed to just, you know, fighting anybody else. I mean, that's the whole point of Bounty Hunter. So they wanted to come out here with like, some unique rewards that would draw people's attention, make it worth their time. But they do talk about whether those are monetary or not. But anyways, we'll get to that later. All right. So they talk about the environment this time around is going to be a crater. So this is different, obviously, than what it used to be. So in old school so far, it's been wilderness wide, basically. I mean, the hotspot was essentially Edgeville, but there were deep wild hotspots too. Like you could kind of pick if you wanted to do like my dog's just eating food. I wonder if you can hear that. You probably can. I'm just gonna keep going. Maybe you can't. Anyways, the way it used to be is, wilderness wide. If you wanted to, camp deep wilderness with friends and try to like lure your target to you and then take them on with a friend, you could try to do that. You could hide in multi. I mean, that's not the most fun thing in the world, but you used to be able to limit your target to the point where if they were above level, I think it was like 10 wilderness, you couldn't get them as a target. So it kind of worked out. Um, yeah, this is, the whole reason they're going to a crater, in my opinion, I think there's just a few reasons. We'll talk about what they're talking about in respect to the crater itself. Right. So the crater. I'm going to read a little bit about this just to get everyone up to speed on this. So they do start with explaining why they're going to a crater. So they talk about in actual 2007, they had this crater. There were multiple of them, and the combat brackets that you could, access those craters was really big. Like the lower level one was 3 to 55 combat level. The medium one was 50 to 100, and the higher tier one was anyone over 95 combat. So it's like think about your most common builds right now. Think about like a maxed 50 attack, one defense account with, 13 to 52 prayer. That's like either it's like in the 70s combat level wise. You're really going to put that account up against a level, you know, 98 account with piety or something with 50 attack or 60 attack or a maxed, 75 attack Zerker, maybe that doesn't have, yeah. So I mean that's under 100 combat. So yeah, so for an obvious reason they decided not to do that. And I'm really glad they decided not to do that. Like initially when they said, "Oh, return to the creators at the summit," there were so many people assuming like, "Oh, it's going to be one for one like it was back in the day." Like, no. No, it's not. They never once said that. So I'm glad they're trying to reinforce that during, this paragraph right here. So, um, yeah, when they first announced it, some players pointed out that it's clearly optimal to always sit at the upper end of the combat brackets. You'll never be matched with an opponent who's higher combat level than you. Yeah, it's amazing that it took people to point that out for them to realize that. Kind of concerning. But anyways, um, now they do try to have like some discussion about some perks that a dedicated closed off area, um, you know, what that offers them, what that affords them. So, so one of the things they talked about was being able to enforce like certain rules, and I really don't know how I feel about these, to be completely honest with you, but um, they offered things like potentially, they wanted to hear our thoughts on these things, potentially no binding spells, so no freezes, nothing to hold your opponent in place. Um, no overhead protection prayers. They say no protection prayers, but they don't mean protect item. They mean like no overhead protection, no protect melee, range mage, and then no use of teleblocks. So, or they say, or just no teleporting, and instead you have to make everyone run to the safe area within the crater. I guess the lobby area, which they talk about in a minute, to get out. So that's what they proposed here. I just really don't know how I feel about these things. Like it goes both ways. Like you can make multiple arguments about this. If there's no freezing spells, I don't know that affects too much. No freezing, no TBs. I'm just trying to like compare this to how Edgeville used to work, right? I mean, how Edgeville used to work is obviously if you're in level one wild, only people within one combat level of you could attack you. So yeah, there's not really much risk there unless someone was like perfectly designed to take you out. Like you're probably not going to get attacked like right next to the ditch. And maybe they saw that as a downside for boosters or anyone trying to bot for monetary rewards. But anyways, that's hopefully a thing of the past, the whole incentive to do that. But anyways, we'll get to that later. But like if someone tried to freeze you in Edgeville, you could just teleport right away. If they teleported you first and then they froze you, okay, you're then like 2 to 3 wild, and you just put up a protection prayer and you're fine. If you're a build that doesn't have protection prayers, okay, kind of annoying, but at the same time, that's the way you built your account, so can't really blame you. Um, Maybe you should have been quicker to teleport. I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, someone could try to take you out, but realistically, if you're decent at eating, you can most likely survive if someone tries to freeze you and TB you. The only people that are really going to die from that, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's the people that just suck. Like, and maybe that's what they're trying to mitigate here is someone just, you know, well, that's what they say right down here, so I'll just read it. The aim of this is to effectively make sure people are fighting honorably, keeping things quick and simple, while minimizing the chances to get caught off guard by a teleblock, entangle, or granite maul special attack out of nowhere while looting your first ever kill. So I get that. I really do. They must have some sort of like PJ timer after you kill someone because if it's pretty quick and there's no overhead protection prayers, you could get one tapped out of nowhere. So I'm just saying. And also looting your first kill, I mean, if you don't have loot keys, I mean, maybe you can't afford it, I guess. Um, I don't know. Like I can see multiple arguments of this. My main concerns really are just rushing. Like if you can't use overhead protection prayers, and again, it goes both ways. So the person that's rushing you can't use them either. Yeah, sure. But I mean, they're going to get first hit on you. So they're likely going to have some sort of advantage. I mean, I've seen a lot of different anti-PK videos, especially with using like the new Void Waker and stuff like that. So if you have Vengeance, yeah, you could probably stack someone back out if you're pre-venged beforehand or something like that. But anyways, I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like if they design the environment to function like Edgeville, but in a confined space, like this crater that they're talking about, it would be fine. You can put a ±5 range on there, so you can attack anybody. So within that bracket range. So if someone 5 levels higher than you really wants to rag you, well, damn. But that wasn't really too big of a problem back in the old Bounty Hunter, and I think they're gonna have some sort of like a minimum risk stuff as part of this too. Not entirely sure. I have to keep scrolling down to see exactly what they say. I don't want to say anything that they didn't say. But anyways, this whole topic of do they have arbitrary rules inside the crater or not? That's a big point of controversy. And to this day, they have not said exactly how it's going to work. So today's April 28th, and they have not said how this is going to work. And I expect this is going to come out in the next like month. So got to keep an eye out for what they do there. Okay, I just want to move on. So you know, they think the last thing I wanted to say is, they acknowledge that players might not want this and they could just stick to the basics and that'd be fine. So, anyways, and they also talk about this is important. So, they also talk about a no honor crater if there's a high demand for one. Again, there's a question in the survey that they highlight, and it was basically like, okay, we're going to focus on revitalizing edge style PvP, but if players also want a different crater with a different set of rules and perhaps a different reward system, I'm assuming a different reward system maybe, um, then a no honor crater could be something that they may be able to have bandwidth to actually implement. I hope they give it careful attention when they do, just to make sure that it all makes sense. But anyways, that's what they said. I personally love that idea. Ever since I actually started playing, Last Man Standing, I got kind of, you know, pretty decent at no honor fights within the PvP arena as well. Um, I'd love to fight like other Zerkers that are Briting, but all you get if you try to go find someone in the wilderness, it's just med levels all the time, and I hate it. It sucks so much. Like if you want to pure NH someone, you might be able to arrange a fight outside of like Ferrix Enclave, and that's probably your best bet to find like a no honor fight with someone your combat level. It's like an arranged fight at that point. So like, do you really even need to be at Ferrix Enclave in the first place? Not really. That's just where most people group up. So, and if you're not careful, someone can still TB you that's like 15 levels higher than you as soon as you run out. So, anyways, if they had a controlled environment where you could no honor fight someone that's your combat level, that would be sick. I just don't know exactly how it would work. Usually to escape someone in a no honor fight, you got a freeze log. Like, just assuming you're teleblocked here, right? So you got a freeze log, and if this whole area is just like this blank canvas with like no trees to run around, you're just gonna have to freeze DD. And like if your opponent brings seeds, it's such a huge area. So like the odds you catch them like right in a corner to escape is pretty slim. They all they have to do to avoid that is just not stand in a corner, and they can just seed away. So, anyways, I'd be curious to see how they implement that if they did do a no hunter crater, because I don't think escaping would be very trivial. And if it's just straight to the death, I don't know how I like that because yeah, because if you just do fight straight to the death, there is going to be one optimal setup, right? And sometimes people choose to have less survivability and more KO potential, and that's what makes the fights interesting. But if it's literally all about outlasting and not about KO potential, essentially what the PvP arena is, um, people are going to converge to the same setup, and that's not the most amount of fun. So I'd be curious to see how they work that if they did work that. But man, I am freaking rambling. Anyways, this is a ramble video in case you didn't know. I hope you're like working out or driving somewhere because this is not going to be very visually stimulating. Okay, so they talk about the layout of the crater here, and very crude picture, of course, but they just wanted to get the general idea across. So, right, you have this huge arena, and of course, it's probably not to scale. Um, but they have all like these like random spawn points. And I think the purpose of that is so you can't spawn in like right next to some account that you're trying to like collude with and get free kills off of and whatever. So they spit people out at random points. And just remember the teleport to target spell still exists. How exactly they're going to deal with that? Because that's tradable, and can that come for Bounty Hunter now? Because it's worth millions? I don't know. They haven't really addressed that. I really hope they do. Anyways, if you're not tracking what I'm talking about, we might get to it later when we talk about rewards. But essentially, the Bounty Hunter teleport scroll is worth like millions of GP right now. They're trying to make the Bounty Hunter system not give any monetary rewards, essentially, um, with BH points. So how are they going to introduce that? Is it going to stay a last man standing reward? That's pretty janky, right? Like, I don't know what they're going to do with that, but they haven't talked about it. I bet if they just randomly made it untradeable, I bet you there's some guy that has like 50 of those stacked up in his bank ready for him to go up in price. And that would really suck for that guy. But anyways, sorry, my God, dude, I have like ADHD. I mean, I play RuneScape, so fair play. Maybe that's not too surprising. I don't actually have ADHD, but maybe I do. So so this arena here, right? Got this lobby in the middle. Lobby's a safe zone. They talk about loading up the lobby with a bunch of useful stuff like a bank, a restoration pool. They mentioned it. I mean, they didn't directly mention that it would be used to get your spec back, but I had some well, anyways, yeah, I think they're thinking that it may be used to get your spec back as well. So that's kind of a controversial point a little bit. I mean, did you want to really lock efficient spec restoration behind getting a high construction level? I mean, that was the argument. And it's like, well, it's not really that much faster, right? Because otherwise you have to like teleport to someone's player own house, go in their house that's hosted in Remington Portal, and then you know, get your spec and get your stats back and teleport back to a bank and re-gear. Yeah, it's a little clunky. It is a little clunky, but getting that construction level does make you doing that just a little bit faster. So I'm biased towards this, I will say, because I literally just got like 83 construction on my 60 attack Zerk account, and I got like the wilderness teleports, I got ornate pool, fancy jewelry box, whatever, like the highest one you can get. Maybe it's ornate, I don't even know. But you can teleport to like the Grand Exchange, Ferox, Edgeville, anywhere, right? So if they come out with this, like just as I got that, that's kind of annoying for me personally. But at the same time, I can see why they want to do it. And honestly, I don't really care that much. That's fine. Making people get their spec back there is great. Um, Only thing I wouldn't want, and I don't think this would even happen, but like if PVMers use this world as a free world to like get spec back next to like a quick teleport, that's going to be annoying because I don't want extra lag from PVMers bogging down like the server as I'm trying to PK. So I'm just going to say that. I don't think that's going to happen though. But anyways, this is how it works, right? You'd spawn in this arena, you'd fight your target, and you'd teleport out, or you'd manually exit through I guess these entrances right here. So it's the entrance to the lobby. You wouldn't actually spawn here. It's the entrance to the lobby. You'd spawn on the outer edge. So that's what they're thinking. And as soon as you're done, you kind of just like talk to some NPC and he teleports you into the arena or something like that. I imagine that's how it's going to work. So that's the overall idea, trying to make like the flow from, you know, gearing, getting into a fight, resetting, like very, very quick. And I think that's generally okay. I kind of wonder what that means for rushing though. Like I'm really I'm not like really concerned, but I just if you make resetting easier and easier and easier, it just makes spec tabbing more and more practical because if you can get your specs off and then teleport and then get back into a fight in like 30 seconds, it doesn't really give people a whole lot of incentive to stay after a fight. I mean, stay after their specs are gone. And again, in Edge style, it's kind of common courtesy to let, once you do your specs, well, anyways, it's common courtesy for both players to get their specs off before, you know, they say, good fight, and they teleport out to try again, right? I will say, if you're a Zerker that does that, you're an asshole because you have vengeance, and if you're actually good, you can kill your opponent with no spec. I'm just gonna say that, okay? It's got to be said. If you're a pure and your opponent just, you know, eats at your max hit or above your max hit every single time, that's no fun. You're really never going to kill that guy unless you're using range and maybe it's a pit swap or something like that. Like you're realistically never going to kill that guy. So, um, yeah, I'm just not sure if being easier and easier to reset is 100% a good thing. It might be a little bit of a bad thing, but anyways, only time will tell. So yeah, they talk about it a bit more here. They talk about what I just talked about, the player own house stuff. So um, yeah, nothing too crazy. They said something like if you want to just have an entertaining background while bank standing, like casting alchemy or doing skilling, you could just sit here and watch it. While I think that's okay, I genuinely do worry about lag. Like I remember Edgeville used to be so crowded, which I really miss, but at the same time it was laggy. But if you have all these people condensed in a lobby area, is that going to make it lag? Because if it does, I don't know if I want that. I don't know. I think maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole here that's not totally true because the Grand Exchange is pretty crowded at the center, and that's not overtly laggy. So I don't know. I'm probably just worrying about too much shit. Okay, so they talk about sculling a bit too. Um, so at present on a target world, I'll read this a little bit. I'm present on entering the wilderness on a target world, which remember these used to be bounty hunter worlds, automatically gives you a skull, meaning you'll be able to protect one item if you're above 25 prayer. Conversely, some of the account builds that players have most enjoyed using in the past have been so-called unskulled builds, where the expectation is that they'll be allowed to fight without sculling up, since they often build their accounts in a way that prevents them from using protect item. So, 13 defense account, I mean 13 prayer accounts, one prayer account, stuff like that. Even 31 prayer accounts, sometimes they don't want to skull. I personally think that's kind of lame, but I mean, if you have protect item, I think you should be sculling, but whatever. There are a couple options they propose here. Option one, everyone inside the BH creator is skulled. Above all else, it's easy. I hate that they say that because they're probably going to do that. But anyways, above all else, option's easy. Everyone knows exactly what they're getting in for. Um, on the other hand, having to buy return sets or stock up in advance, as well as the potential of being overwhelmed and forgetting your protect item prayer, might be off-putting for newer PvPers. I get that. And at the same time, if newer PKers are not totally comfortable with the prayer drain rate that Smite introduces, even though it's not that drastic, all things considered, um, y- I do get that. Like if someone wants to PK with like an AGS or claws and they're new and they really need to use those weapons because otherwise they're just not going to get any kills, um, a player like that unsculling would be okay, in my opinion. But here's the caveat though, right? Why do you hate unscullers, right? The main reason, if you're watching this and you hate unscullers, you hate them because they have high capabilities with a seriously watered down level of risk that they would otherwise have if they were sculled, right? I mean that's why you hate them. That's got to be why you hate them. And especially if someone is good and they're unsculling, then it's like, okay, you're really a scumbag. Sometimes, and I would say even most of the times in PvP worlds, especially now, if you see someone unsculling and they're actually good, they actually are risking a fair bit, like probably double to even quadruple what a standard player is risking. Not all the times, but sometimes. Um, so that's the main problem. That's the problem that they have to resolve. They need to make the risk be at least somehow proportional to what capability that account has in that gear. Now, whether or not they can tie it to that gear, I don't know, but they might be able to do some other way. So option two, they said we use the typical sculling mechanics. We use the typical sculling mechanics, sorry, throughout the crater. If you initiate combat, you get a skull, which cannot be lost during combat. I love that they made that change a couple years ago. For players choosing to remain unskulled, they have to deposit GP into a bounty coffer to be able to enter the crater. The amount of GP could scale with your combat level or with combat level brackets and be set up to only take effect after you've already got a few kills under your belt. So that's a pretty fantastic idea, if I do say so myself. I'm kind of just poking fun. I actually suggested that. I'll show you a little bit later, but they make some references to like this community suggestion blog, and it was literally mine. So, anyways, I'll get to that in a minute. But long story short, a lot of the stuff that they're putting in here is stuff that I directly had put in that. So, kind of feel good about that. They listened to a bit about what I said in that, but anyways, they basically asked people in the survey about this. Um, Again, my personal opinion, I like option two a lot better. Now, how exactly they can code option two, I don't know. That's something that like I never really thought about as like a player that played the game 10 years ago or 5 years ago. You know, requesting something and then questioning can they even code it? That's something I didn't even think about, but that's something you unfortunately have to think about. So we'll see what they can do. I like option two. I think build diversity is great. Like if you have 13 prayer builds going out there, as long as they risk something like measurable, that's not just like 25K, I'd say hell yeah. Like build diversity is amazing. I love used to seeing, you know, 42 defense, 13 prayer accounts with Barrows gloves, or 16 prayer with Barrows gloves. That is sick. That is such a cool account, and you should not delete those accounts from existence just because some people want to tell other people how they have to play the game. Like as long as their risk is somewhat there, that's fine. Now, if that low prayer account says off smite low prayer, I fully enforce you to say, fuck you, I'm going to smite you because this is the reason I have 52 prayer. I hate when people say that. It's like, no smite. It's like, why do you think I got smite? To make your account worse because you obviously have some sort of advantage because you optimized at a lower combat level with that prayer level. Anyways, um, yeah, smite their ass back, but I still think that should be a thing. Okay, they're talking about matchmaking, um, how it's going to work. So by default, your target will be within 5 combat levels of your own. The entirety of the crater acts the same, allowing the unrestricted combat within 5 combat levels if somebody decides to go rogue. I think they did this because, of course, it's not the wilderness anymore. So, I mean, they could technically make it it the perimeter of the crater is ±5, or I mean ±1, and as you get closer to the center, it could be more dangerous, ±5. They could do that. I just don't think they want people like migrating to the edge of the crater. I think that's what they're thinking, so I don't mind that. I think that's fine. They also talk about, on the other hand, if you're happy to cast a wider net, then we could have the option to increase your matchmaking range to +10 and maybe even +15, which are what PvP worlds are at the moment, which I personally hate, but whatever. Um, but I think having this as an option is okay. I also think that if you had this as an option, and you kill someone that is much higher combat level than you should definitely get more reward for that. Like if you're willing to fight people that are higher combat level than you should absolutely get more reward for doing that. Now, how they could code that, again, I don't know. Um, I don't think it's that hard, but there might be aspects of balancing that you just have to think about. Like, could someone technically try to boost if they had that enabled, and how much better points per hour would that be? All these crappy things you have to think about just because people like to boost stuff. But long story short, I don't think it'll be too terrible. They're gonna get to this later, but anything you get from killing your target, I believe, is going to be um, bounty hunter points, and they may have some earning potential system that runs in parallel with the bounty hunter point system. And the earning potential system is the only way you can actually make GP from the minigame, like game generated GP from the minigame. Like, of course, you get your target's loot, anything they don't protect, but this earning potential system that they talk about a bit later, I think is how you get your main source of like game generated GP. So, anyways, I'll talk about that later. It was in my Bounty Hunter blog too. Again, it took a lot from my blog, so I'm really glad that I shared that a while ago. Maybe I have it up here. Okay, so maybe I'll walk through some of this later. Okay. Um, let's see. So they talk about how their game engine has come a long way to maybe hard code some more things to make boosting a bit more um I guess discouraged, so they like be able to essentially remember your last X number of targets and not be able to reassign you to the same person, which again helps would-be boosters. So they really did go into this head first thinking about how can we deter boosters to the utmost of our ability. And I really appreciate them doing that. I know some people don't think boosters were a problem, but I don't know what to say. Like if you don't think boosters were a problem, I think you're kind of living under a rock. Like they're not a problem. Well, let me put it like this. It's like the impact on player experience that boosters have in PvP related things is so much higher, in my opinion, than what PVM or PVM boosters are. And you could definitely disagree with that. I mean, I think bots in general, I mean, people don't like them, but if you're trying to buy 10,000 Dragon Bones off the Grand Exchange, where do you think those are coming from? Like PVM drops? Maybe not. And what kind of PVM drops? Oh, forecast? Is that botted or is that real? So I don't know. I botting is such a weird thing with old school RuneScape. It's just so weird. It's like you hate them, but you also kind of love them in a certain way, like because skilling resources, nobody skills anymore. I mean, nobody really skills that much anymore. Skilling has become such like an obsolete part of the game to the point where you can just get everything through PVM essentially. If you're an Iron Man, you probably skill, obviously, but I don't know. I personally fucking hate skilling, so I'm not the best person to talk about this. It's just so boring. But anyways, that's a PK review. I'm gonna get back to this. So they talk about some more mechanics here. So upon entering the crater, there'll be a short delay before getting assigned a target. This gives you a little bit of time to get prepared, but could also act as an immunity period to prevent you from being rushed as soon as you spawn in combat. As soon as you spawn in for combat, I really like that. So I don't have anything to say about that. That's a really good idea. Um, you won't be able to receive a target while in the lobby area, meaning you'll have to make your way into the crater before getting a target. I like that too. You should not be able to get a target while you're in a safe zone. That doesn't make any sense. So as before, you'll be given the option to skip a target if you don't fancy the fight. Maybe their build is one you're not familiar with, their risk isn't quite up to scratch, or they have a controversial opinion regarding pineapples and pizza. I think Goblin's having too much fun writing this blog. Anyways, so yeah, you'll be able to skip targets essentially. They didn't say exactly um, how many targets you'll be able to skip, but they talk about it a bit down here. So if you skip too many targets within a short time, you'll receive a penalty. They haven't said exactly what that is, but they did say as an example, if you skip three people in a 30-minute window, then you're unable to get a target for 30 minutes. So you'd have to either go rogue or wait it out, or just go to PvP worlds and then come back, as we all used to do, right? Um, on your next, I guess, victory, you'll receive reduced bounty hunter rewards. So you won't get an upgrade, and you'll get reduced points to go along with that. I think that's good. I mean, I like that. So it's basically trying to be a system where you can't just control which target you get every time. That's what they're really trying to prevent here. And it's just boosters. It's very evident they're trying to prevent boosters. So we want to strike a balance between giving people a good bit of freedom if they're looking for a certain kind of fight, but not giving them the freedom to actively get a certain player as a target. If you have any suggestions for tweaks that would help, let us know, essentially. So um, I think they're going about this a really smart way. I'll just put it like that. Now, I will say that I think there's going to be a soft launch of this, much like there was a PvP arena soft launch before that fully came into the game. And you best believe that as soon as that soft launch comes out, I'm going to be doing everything I can to exploit the crap out of that just to see where the weak points are. Because I guarantee you, however unboostable they try to make this, it's going to be boostable in some way or the other. So I think finding that optimal route and like implementing more safeguards or, passive um, discouragement, I guess, against those, that's definitely going to be the best move. So, anyways, to talk about going rogue here as well. This is a long first blog here, so I think I've spent a long time on this, but I hope you're entertained somewhat. Um, so they talk about rogue. It's basically killing someone that's not your target. That's essentially it. You don't necessarily get any extra rewards for it. You just get their loot, which I think is the right way to go. As far as consequences, they wanted some feedback. I don't really know if there should be any consequences per se. I I mean, there weren't last time. The only consequence is, you rank up in a different high score bracket. They had rogue kills versus target kills, so you get a different high score tally for that. You don't get any emblems or anything like that. One thing okay, I will say this. You're going to talk about emblems next, but I'm going to say if you're going rogue and you kill someone that has an emblem, their emblem should just go to nothing. It should disappear. It should be deleted from the game. If you go rogue and rush someone, you should not get an emblem. That should only be for target hunting. But anyways, in regards to how emblems are transferred between players, if at all, um, that's covered in the next section. So they talk about emblems here. So mysterious emblems, God, I miss these things. I mean, these things were like the thing that made bounty hunters so memorable. I mean, for crying out loud, it's like the first huge thing on my post. So, um, okay, the emblem system is probably the most memorable components of Bounty Hunters gone by. Yes, it is. It's a way to encourage players to go for those kill streaks and give additional rewards to ruthlessly efficient killers who never let their hit points drop below zero. So it's basically a kill streak reward. The value of emblems depends on the rewards available, but before we get to those, we'd like to figure out a core system that works best for you. We've got two ideas of how these mysterious objects could work that will outline below. But if you can think of a better way, we're all ears. So they said they have these two approaches, the single emblem approach and the multi-emblem approach. So the single emblem approach effectively rewards you with bonus points for killing emblem holders and lets you build up your streaks to hopefully cash in your own tier 10 for some bonus points as well. You'll have one emblem at any given moment that can't be traded, out, noted, or stacked. Killing your target levels your emblem up, and killing a target with a high tier emblem will reward you with bonus bounty hunter points. Okay, not so sure about that. Um, not so sure about that, especially not so sure about that. Killing a target with a high tier emblem will reward you with bonus bounty hunter points. So you're gonna understand why I don't like this. The main reason I don't like this is because I truly don't believe that players should be able to essentially transfer bounty hunter points to another account. So, in other words, if you earn a tier 10, you should not be able to get that tier 10 to another account, especially if all these, it all makes sense. I mean, it all makes, it's hard to succinctly say this. Like the whole system matters. Like some of these design decisions you just have to think about the entire system. And like you may be not really tracking what I'm talking about right now. In this blog, I don't know. In this blog, let me just show you this. In this blog, I literally laid out an entire bounty hunter system. Like literally almost every detail you could think of. I laid out an entire bounty hunter system. So I kind of already know what's coming. So I'm trying to like verbalize that in a way that makes sense here. So I can see how this could be okay because the person that you're killing can't necessarily have like 10 of these emblems stacked up. They can only have one. So you have to kill that person. They have to be your target and they have to have a higher tier emblem that they must have got themselves. Now, did they boost for it? Maybe. Um, but even if they did, they can only have one at a time. So like it takes a good amount of time to get that high tier emblem. So if you get it on one account, should you be able to transfer it to another account? I honestly would say no, you shouldn't be able to do that because that's just gonna that it essentially enables boosting. If you get a high tier emblem on like a PKing account, you can sell that essentially to a non-PKing account. And if any non-PKing account has any incentive whatsoever to get a reward from the reward system, um, the reward shop, they will have a reason to buy that emblem essentially. I mean, they're just going to say, hey, I'll give you 2 mil if I can kill you when you're carrying a tier 10, stuff like that. And while that stuff did kind of go on in the last Bounty Hunter, that was one of the things that I hated the most. Like being able to sell Bounty Hunter currency. Instead of updating the shop to make it more worthwhile, there was a bunch of random crap in the last shop. Let's be real. Like people only bought like rune plate legs because that was the best like GP per point. So stuff like that I could talk about for a long time. The whole like balancing of reward shops. But anyways, around GP. But anyways, like being able to transfer bounty hunter points directly to another account that did not otherwise earn them themselves, I don't like at all. So I don't like the single emblem approach. And obviously I'm biased because this multi-emblem approach is literally exactly what I'm saying. So I guess more or less. So let's read it. So the multi-emblem approach outlined in this player suggestion blog from 2022, um, that is mine. So if you click this, it will literally take you to uh, exactly my blog. um, so effectively gives you plenty of opportunities to go for streaks and to have multiple emblems on the go in case you're not feeling super confident and don't want to risk your tier 9. Emblems of the same tier can stack for easy inventory management. I did not suggest that, but I guess they are. Um, Killing your target levels up your highest tier emblem, and killing a target with a high tier emblem will reward you with a bunch of tier 1 emblems. The aim will of with both systems is for the tier 10 emblems to be worth significantly more than tier 1 emblems, so that you're encouraged to level your emblem as high as possible rather than obtaining a pre-leveled emblem from your target, as in previous iterations of Bounty Hunter. So, in my opinion, this is the way to go. I will say they did not do a great job of explaining this, so I just want to go to my blog really quick to outline exactly how I wanted it to work. Um, let's go here. Uh, I think this is the one. Yep. Yeah, really, really big blog here. So if you want to read this, by all means, go for it. But if you don't, I don't blame you. Okay, so let's go to what I said for the emblem system. I also have like a point system in general here. So I basically wanted to make it such that you get like a small amount of points just for killing your target in general. you you get more points for killing your target if you're skulled than if you're unskulled. So you could be unskulled in my version that I pitched here, but you just get less game generated rewards. That was my kind of shot at balancing it. And you also have some minimum risk if you're unskulled that's tied to your combat level. It scales off that. But anyways, um, yeah, so different ways to get points here. For example, a standard target kill, and then if you kill someone much higher combat level than you, if you kill someone and you're on a kill streak, and if you return in mysterious emblems. So here's how my emblem system worked right here. So tier 1 through tier 10, like just how it how it used to be. Your tier 1 emblems are received as common drop from your target at a rate of 1 in 4. Pretty common. If you defeat your target with an emblem in your inventory, it increases by 1 tier, and only one emblem can upgrade per kill, which is the highest in your inventory. So there's literally no reason to carry multiple tiers. I know in the last version of Bounty Hunter, they had like, you can upgrade 3 tiers at a time. Yeah, how'd that work out? Not so good because it was tied to GP ultimately. But anyways, so dying to your target with a tier X emblem will cause the emblem to degrade by 1 tier and divide into X minus 1 many tier 1 emblems. So these tier 1 emblems can either drop to the floor, be sent to a loot key, or be retrieved as credit from the emblem trader in Edgeville. Again, context here, I had this bounty hunter system exist in Wilderness Wide where they're having it in a crater. So a little bit different in the terminology, but whatever. If your opponent is carrying more than one high tier emblem, which again, in my system, there's no reason for doing that, but I'm thinking, would a booster do this? Only the highest tier emblem is divided into tier ones, the rest are destroyed on death. only one emblem can divide on death. So, and then tier one emblems are always destroyed on death. You cannot transfer a tier one emblem to another account. So essentially, um, if you had a tier six emblem and you kill someone with a and they had a tier eight emblem, your emblem would go up to a tier seven, and then their tier eight emblem would divide into seven tier one emblems, and you'd also have a one in fourth chance of getting a another tier one emblem, if that makes sense. So their tier eight downgraded by one tier, now it's a tier seven, divided into seven tier one emblems. So you don't get a tier seven emblem from them. You get seven tier one emblems, plus that extra one in fourth rate to get an eighth one. That's how it would work for me. That's the way I'd want it to work. So essentially, you cannot transfer a significant amount of bounty hunter currency to another account that did not otherwise earn it. And you could say, oh, well, they killed that player, they earn it. It's like, well, not really. They killed a player that was on an 8 kill streak or whatever, or maybe just happened to pull out their emblem for that kill or whatever. That doesn't mean you should get all those points. I really don't believe that you should. Um, so all emblems will be untradeable, can't be out, can't exist in any noted form. All emblems are destroyed on death. Like they say, it bugs me here, right? Because let's see here. Yeah, they can't be alchemized, noted, or stacked. But in this one, you can stack them. So if you couldn't stack them before, I mean, of course you can't stack them because you only have one at a time. So I don't know why they even needed to say that, but I don't know. Anyways, here, let's get back to this guy. So the intent of the mechanics is to um, okay, this is explaining how it works, what I described earlier, how the tiers divide up. But the intent of these mechanics is to prevent the ability to quickly transfer a large amount of bounty hunter points to another account and to encourage players to target hunt. So this is how the emblems will be redeemed um, with the emblem trader in Edgeville. So essentially, they each have a trade-in value, and this like grayed out number is essentially like how many extra bounty hunter points you get from upgrading it. So if each extra emblem upgrade got you like plus three, plus three, plus three, there's really no reason to go past a certain tier, right? So they each have to give you a higher delta when you upgrade it. So again, these points are totally notional, but it's balanced around the reward system that I put in here. So just don't mind the points, but just understand that as you get higher emblem, the benefit from getting the higher emblem is significant. So something to note here. I just try to put this in context. Yeah. When you sell a tier 10 emblem, when you try to sell one via dying to someone else who's not your target, that would destroy the emblem with this system that I propose. If a player just so happens to be your target, they will receive 9 tier 1 emblems, potentially 10 with a 1/4 roll. This equates to 4.5 to 5 bounty hunter points for the emblems, up to 7 points for the kill itself, which is, maybe they had a combat level disadvantage on you, maybe they were on a kill streak themselves. And then they also gain up to 40 points if they are also carrying a tier 9 emblem of their own. Remember, because transferring from a tier 10 to a tier 9 gets you an extra 40 points for doing that. So this entire transaction could potentially get a booster 51.5 to 52 points. So the orchestration involved in arranging that setup would essentially yield poor bounty hunter points per hour compared to properly participating in the minigame. And this is the intent of the system that I'm proposing. So emblem boosting will not be worthwhile, and accounts with a large amount of BH points in the form of emblems will not be able to quickly mass transfer those points to another account. There will also be near zero monetary reason to do so. I mentioned something about the rewards in section 3 about some sort of monetary reward, but it wouldn't be tied to the bounty hunter points. But it's also understood that players will always try to pay for services, but realistically, this is impossible to prevent. It just needs to be accepted that these passive measures built into the design will deter this kind of exploitative gameplay. Um, that was essentially my pitch. So this is kind of them adopting what I had a little bit. Um, I don't really like that they can stack. I don't know if that's great. Um, I think, dividing them into multiple emblems, I mean, maybe that's why they were thinking having them stacked would be good. Uh, I think that's fine. I mean, if people have loot keys, it doesn't really matter. So, and if they don't, I guess having to pick all those up would be frustrating. So, I mean, maybe stacking is okay. I don't think it's a real big deal breaker. I'll take that back. Okay, so the aim for both systems here is for have tier 10s be worth a lot more than tier 1s, so you're encouraged to go for a high emblem as you can rather than obtaining pre-leveled emblem from your target, like last iterations. I think that's good. I have seen a couple people talk about this, like Solo Mission made a blog about this or a ramble about this a little bit ago. When I think like when this first came out, and I think he has a good point. Like he was saying that you're not really incentivized to you're not really incentivized to take many risks, right? You're incentivized to go for a kill streak, which incentivizes you to like try to safe and not really put yourself in many risky situations. I would say that like I and I mean this respectfully. I think solo mission. I don't think he edge PKs very much. People can try to safe, but reality is today there's no such thing as safing. I don't think it's really going to change the way anybody plays the game. Like you're not gonna risk sitting on 45 HP to an AGS spec just so you can like, I don't know, spec them the very next tick when in reality they chanced you and they ate your spec, right? I mean, you're not gonna chance if it's a really good player and you're trying to risk HP, it's just not gonna happen. Like this is a really like sweaty perspective coming from me, but that it just wouldn't change anything. I really don't think it would change anything. People are going to play the same. They don't want to die. Taking risks is fun as long as it's a risk that could actually kill another player. And odds are, if you're not taking any risks at all and you're only specking when you're full HP, unless you have like a, high Gmaul spec on PID and then like a big whack afterwards or, big AGS mall on PID, again, on PID. So unless you get all that, if you're playing super safely, you're not going to get many kills. It balances itself out. If people are going to take risks, they're going to get some more kills, and that's going to have them get a kill streak. You can't get a kill streak if you don't get any kills. So I get his perspective, but at the same time, I don't know if I agree with that. Okay. Obviously, I voted for that one. Hope that one wins. I just don't really see uh many perks of this. I think it could still be abused, and this one is far less abusable, honestly. I mean, it just depends, right? You'll get bonus bounty hunter points if you kill someone with a high tier emblem. How many we talking? I mean, that matters. So, anyways, they're talking about bounty hunter points now. This is one of the simpler aspects of design, but in what looks like a growing trend, we've got two ideas for you to weigh up. So, I invite you to perhaps throw out some more. Okay. So, obviously, each successful target should award you a bounty hunter point to be exchanged for stuff. So what they're saying is pretty consistent with what I said. You get points just for killing your target, and emblems are another source of points. They're saying we could give you extra points for kill streaks, meaning you're still getting a little something extra, even if you wind up dying with your emblem before trading it in. I like this idea so much, so much. Yes, please do this. I mean, this is a perfect train of thought. We could give you extra points for kill streaks, meaning you're still getting a little something extra if you wind up dying on your kill streak and you lose your emblem. The sucky part is if you go on this kill streak with your emblem and you don't make it all the way to your designated tier that you're trying to get to before you trade it in, it's like, oh, I just did all that for nothing. When meanwhile, you could be accumulating like these little passive amount of points along the way. I think that's perfect. So I like that a lot. They said they're undecided if it's necessary alongside the emblem system, trying to put in front of you to help us help figure it out. So I hope there was enough incentive. I hope there was enough feedback saying yes. Um, I really don't know. I really don't know how many edge PKers are around giving feedback anymore, to be like completely honest with you guys. I feel like so many quit when Bounty Hunter was removed, when the rewards from Bounty Hunter were removed. Um, I just hope people are giving good feedback on this. So let's see. Talking about monetary reward here. So this is a really interesting part. Again, they reference my design blog again, but um, I like what they have here. I helped Goblin write some of this stuff. Um, anyways, so I'll read this because I think it's worth walking through each of this. So previous iterations of Bounty Hunter haven't exactly been smooth sailing. That's yeah. In the past, tying bounty hunter points to GP resulted in boosting by gold farmers to generate immense amounts of gold per hour at the expense of matchmaking and gameplay experience of players who were engaging in good faith. I will say, generating immense amounts of gold per hour. I don't really know how exaggerated that is. I do understand it though, because if you look at, you could say, oh, Vorkath is crazy GP per hour. You really have to think about the alch value of those Vorkath kills because if you get like a lot of like superior dragon bones, yeah, they might sell for like 10k on the grand exchange, but they don't alch for 10k. It doesn't insert gold into the game. Like there are limited amount of ways that actual GP enters the game. It's a lot of it's through alchemy and selling to shops. But PvP, last time when they had these emblems be exchanged for like hundreds of thousands of GP, that was just a really interesting idea. I will say that. Like I know people beg for that. I wasn't part of those conversations, but back then, I don't really know if I would have had too much of a different opinion on it. Honestly, hindsight's always 2020, so I don't blame them for saying that, whoever did say that. But that did not go well. So Vorkath, I will tell you, if you're getting 30 kills an hour on the wiki, you can find this information. Average kill is worth about 43k in high alch value. So 30 kills an hour, 40 per kill. That's 1.2 mil raw GP entering the game per hour. And a single account can do that. Now, if you looked at how many, you know, players did it take to collude together to get high GP rates for the old bounty hunter system, I don't think it was actually that much more on a per account basis than Vorkath. So are they exaggerating how much GP per hour entered the game? Maybe. I'll be honest, I don't have all the data on it. I'm referring to like a Torvesta video that he made, but I imagine like the sweatiest person doing this with their alts probably didn't make a video on it. So it was maybe more than that, but I understand why they took it out because of that. Um, if it was higher than that, but I think the main reason they took it out was the expense gameplay experience to other players. I, for one, fucking hated the last version of Bounty Hunter. It was just a bunch of boosters waiting at the ditch, trying to line up a kill that they pay for. It's so fucking stupid. I hated it so much. So that was a big problem. So, anyways, to talk about this now. Elements of the above design go some way to combat this by preventing frequent rematches, harsher skip penalties, potential unskulled costs, and even the use of the creator itself. There's nowhere to hide inside the crater, meaning no more camping all the way over by the Varric lumberyard. Once you're in, you fight, run, or die. I like that a lot. With this in mind, we'd like to share with you another proposal from the same community design blog. That one's mine they're talking about that we think has some merit in an earning potential system. This was probably like my favorite part of writing this, and this was not my direct idea. I mean, of course, it existed previously, but I had someone DM me on Discord. I gave them a shout out at the end of my blog that I have on Reddit, but he really put this idea in my mind, and I tweaked it a little bit, and then Goblin wanted to tweak a little bit more to make it a little bit more uh, realistic, maybe. But it goes like this. So the aims of this player-suggested EP system are to effectively decouple GP from bounty hunter points, provide an additional monetary incentive for players engaging in good faith, allow us to cap the amount of gold that's possible to generate per hour, and to give players some help paying back a handful of deaths if they're opting into extra risk. We think it's a really interesting system, though pretty complex and in need of tweaking, so we'd love to hear your views. Here's how it works in relatively simple terms. All players inside the Bounty Hunter crater start at 0% earning potential. To be eligible to gain earning potential, players must risk a certain amount of GP. This risk would be deposited in a coffer. It's easy enough for us to make a coffer work for something like this, but it's much more difficult to use your equipped or held gear. So my proposal was to use your equipped or held gear, um, and or at least have that contribute up to some risk threshold that you needed to surpass in order to gain EP. They weren't able to do that, I guess. It's just more technically complicated. I think they could probably do it based off of like high alchemy cost or high alchemy value. I really wish they would just do that. Like not off grand exchange value. High alchemy value would be great, but anyways, they don't seem to mention that. EP systems in the past ran into issues with players using low trade in volumes. Oh, sorry, using low trade volume items with inflated GE exchange values to artificially increase their risk. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Like if someone uses like a clue scroll reward that isn't traded very much, they could make their risk look a lot more. That's why I'm saying if you use high alchemy value instead of GE value, you could get someone to risk something minimum. But anyways, adding in a whitelist of included items or blacklist of included items is difficult to do and results in potentially endless maintaining to try to avoid loopholes using the same being used to game the system. I sympathize with that. I get it. I think you're sleeping on the high alch value idea. If a player is eligible to gain EP, they'll gain 2.5% earning potential every 2 minutes. So entering a safe area before the 2 minutes are up will reset your EP gain timer, but remember your EP value. So, let's say you're sitting at 5% EP, you're in the creator for a minute, and then decide, oh, I want to go back and get a different setup. You will have elapsed 1 minute to gain that next, 2.5%, and that will reset when you exit the creator, but you'll still have 5% when you come back in. That's essentially what that says. Dying to your target increases your EP by 10%. I did say this in my blog. Um, I did say that this should be time gated to only happen at most 4 times per hour. So once every 15 minutes. I believe I said that in my blog. So I think you should do that because if not, you could potentially have people boost this. Yes, they would lose that minimum risk, as it said here. They would lose that minimum risk if they die. Um, but if you're colluding with that same player, that doesn't really mean anything because that risk will just go right back to that player. And I don't want any gold sinks from this, so again, they might need to time gate it, but they're saying they might not have to because they might be able to limit, rematches with the same target. So, killing your target means your EP depletes back to 0%. Dear God, I can't talk. 0%. Depending on how much EP you had, you'll receive some kind of reward crate, and the average value increases with higher EP. So the original suggestion was had this value made up primarily of artifacts that could be traded into an NPC. So um, you would have needed to complete the Wilderness Medium Diary to do this. This was kind of my way to at least put some barrier on the monetary rewards and tying it to the wilderness. I think just made sense. Purists can complete this at one defense, so and I think one prayer, so that's not really a problem. Um, and I also propose that the EP system give out a ton of blighted supplies to ultimately drive the price of them way down. If you look at the cost comparison of a blighted anglerfish to a regular anglerfish or a karambwan to a blighted karambwan, it makes no sense. The blighted versions are either really close to the same value or even more expensive, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like Jagex needs to just pump these things into the game and bring the cost way down. Okay. So Um, so they say here that they're not looking to bring back what we might remember as the old EP system. So you won't be able to get like a dragon full helmet from this. Like that's not going to be a thing. Um, they said they think it's a system that has a lot of promise, and they wanted to know if you like the idea. So I hope people did. Um, I did suggest that this would be the sole source of game generated monetary gain from Bounty Hunter. Um, and I think that has a lot of potential here. So if you don't like it, you know, I I think talking about the rewards uh, is worthwhile here. So they say no matter what, we like to offer some additional rewards that go beyond pure profit to keep you invested, but we don't want to completely close the door on offering additional monetary incentives. Above all else, we want players to feel rewarded for their time getting stuck in this fast-paced style of PvP. Yep, sounds good to me. Okay, now they talk about rewards. I don't know if I'm going to go over this entirely, but I am going to mention a few things. They mention Ancient Warrior equipment, so that's the Vestas, Statius, Morgans, Zuriel stuff. Um, they did mention bounty hunter specific weapon attachments. So that's stuff that you can attach or, I guess combine with weapons that are kind of maybe obsolete in the views of some. Uh, I would say I potentially agree with this. Things like the Dragon Mace, Dragon Longsword, Dark Bow, other weapons like that. They have come out. Yeah, I'll talk about this. They've actually mentioned blogs about this, so I will go to that blog next here. Combat XP. This was my idea. The weapon and views were not my idea. I think they're neat, but I have some more comments on these later. Combat XP. I think this is great. So essentially, this is going to be like pest control style combat XP. Um, and then they're also talking about negative XP lamps. We'll talk about that in the next blog here. I'm going to touch on. So, yeah, combat XP is just like if you they're talking about blocking combat XP within the crater. So if you go in the crater and attack someone, you're gonna get an XP drop, but it's gonna be like a blocked XP drop. So you can't accidentally get two defense or something in Bounty Hunter. That won't be possible anymore. Um, but you can't necessarily train your account in Bounty Hunter anymore. So this combat XP would be a good way to collect these points. And if you're training an account or currently building up an account and you want to build it up by PKing, now you can do that. I think, if you put all your points into this, it should be faster XP per hour than doing just pest control. They talk about minus XP lamps. I'll talk about them later. They have had some more evolutions since then. Ornament kits, recolors, stuff like that. So now I'm going to go to that. That was a lot. So I just want to take a minute. This blog really went over like the mechanics of how the bounty hunter system of systems is going to work. And again, it looks like they pulled a ton of it from the blog that I wrote, which I'm really glad they did. I mean, I put a lot, a lot of effort into this blog. Like I can't even like scroll through the whole thing on the full screen of Reddit right now. I mean, I could like um I just gotta zoom out a crap ton here. I mean, every page looks like this. So these are the emblems that, like, for example, these are like the emblems that I had kind of thought about. If you're between this certain percentage of EP, it'll add an average value of, this much GP to your loot. Um, at 100%, it can get you up to 700K extra GP on average. So if you look at all these different emblems here, bunch of different things here, maybe you might get lucky and get a 1 mil GP thing when you're at 60% EP or something. It's just an on average thing. So I don't want it to be 100% predictable, right? Because part of the fun of RuneScape is the RNG part of it, so I don't want to take that away. But being able to get these emblems and have them convert directly to GP, but have them be time gated, that's the main thing. It's the GP per hour that you can generate from the game itself. That's the thing that needs balanced. That's the number one thing that needs balance. It's the rate. All these things are about the rate. Um, I also had like these untradeable reward. I mean, this is kind of just I had some set here. This is Statius' set that I just stained a different color, but um, I thought it would make sense that you could get some of the more unique untradeable rewards as super rare drops from the EP system. I thought that would be kind of nice. I don't know if they're going to bring that back or not, but that's just something else that I had proposed. So, um, all right, went through a lot there, and I think it's time to jump into the rewards. So. This is the beta. I don't think I'm going to go over this too much, but what you see here, essentially this purple armor that looks like old Stadius armor is essentially corrupt Stadius armor. So it's got a 20 defense requirement and has really good offensive stats. Like this is going to be really, really exciting stuff. And I wanted to share more thoughts on this. This is just explaining the different stuff here. So I'm just going to get into the poll blog to show you exactly what they are polling for Bounty Hunter. All right, let's talk a bit about the Bounty Hunter rewards. So again, this poll dropped just a few days ago on April 25th. Again, today's April 28th for me. That's when I'm recording this. So only 3 days ago. So this is what Jagex is proposing as rewards to come from Bounty Hunter this time around. The first thing they talk about is Ancient Warriors equipment. So these are untradeable pieces of armor that can be purchased using Bounty Hunter points. They'll be usable within the Bounty Hunter crater, and each piece will require charging with 5 mil to be usable. Upon PvP death, this GP is lost to whoever killed you, leaving you with an inert item that you'll have to recharge before using again. So all these sit at tier 78, meaning you'll need a hefty 78 defense to equip them. Wearing a full set of any particular Ancient Warrior's armor provides a set effect that provides 15% accuracy for any special attacks in their style, melee for Vestas and Stadius, range for Morgans, and magic for Zerials. So basically, if you spec someone with a DDS in Vestas, you're going to get a 15% accuracy boost. Now, if you want to stick around or skip to the section where I talk about quantitatively what does that look like in regards to your percent chance to actually hit them, like your hit chance against different defense levels and different builds. I go into like super nitty gritty detail on that, but for now, I just want to go over what this stuff actually is. Um, so, um, again, this is what they propose here. So, if you look at the offensive bonuses from these, 9 across the board in melee, 7 across the board in melee for Vestas. That is crazy. That is literally like wearing a torture, but those stats are on your body. That's crazy. Melee strength 6th for the chain body and a 3 for the plate skirt. That is like Torva. Um, so that is pretty crazy. And this is tier 78. So the defense bonuses are nowhere near Torva. In all honesty, the defense bonuses here um, are not that high, especially for being tier 78. So they have Vestas and Stadius here. So two armor sets. You may be wondering, what's the difference? They all seem pretty similar. Um, I think the only main difference is Stadius is a little bit more tankier on the defense end. You need all three items instead of the two, of course. The set between the two has a little bit less strength bonus than Vesta's, only by one if you look at um, the body. I guess the kick is that you need to be wearing the helm to get the set effect. So you can't be using, a serpentine helm with Stadius. You have to use that with Vestas. So um, Stadius has a good amount of crush bonus. Vestas does too, though. If you add this up across the board, just body and plate legs, you get 12 for Stadius, you get 16 for Vestas. So 17 with the full Stadius set, 16 with the whole Vestas set. So honestly, I think they could have made Stadius a bit more stand out for crush and not so good for stab and slash. They could have made Vestas a bit better for stab and slash, but not so great for crush. But Stadius is a bit more tankier and has a little bit of prayer bonus, where Vestas is not as tanky, but it's like the full-on melee bonuses. So pretty interesting. Morgan's, this one is really interesting. So range strength on the body and chaps, 6 per piece. That is really high. That is crazy. That's like Masori level high, which is nuts. And then really good range attack bonuses on all the armor pieces as well. And then Zuriel's is looking good as well. This doesn't give any any max hits per se, but again, it does give that 15% accuracy to magic special attacks. Kind of weird because uh, in one of the polls from, well, when they first launched the beta, Zuriel's was going to I'll show you where it says it. Zuriel's gives 50% accuracy to magic attacks. And note that this is any old magic attack, since there aren't a whole lot of magic special attacks. So that's what it said during the beta, that Zuriel's would give it to any magic attack, not just specs, but now they're saying just specs. So I don't know if that was inconsistency or not. I hope that's at least addressed at some point, but I'm not sure. So um, they're also bringing corrupt equipment, and this is huge. This is crazy. Well, not crazy in a bad way. I think this is going to be super interesting. So these are variants of, the normal armor that takes 78 defense to equip. This these variants take 20 defense to equip. They have appropriately lesser, defense bonuses, but they have pretty comparable melee bonuses. You'll notice that they did not ramp these all the way up to what the non-corrupt versions are, but they come pretty darn close. I think they're like literally like -1 across the board from what the non-corrupt versions are. So you got Vestas, you got Statius, Morgans, and Zuriels. So I mean, Morgan's is going to be huge for 20 defense. I mean, 20 defense right now, you're talking black d'hide chaps, a studded body, and a coif, and now you're going to have this. That is extremely significant. Um, Zuriel's, I think, is a decent upgrade, but I don't think it's that fantastic. I think defensively, as a mage set, Zuriel's is pretty good. If you look at Zuriel's defense bonuses compared to like any other old robes at 20 defense, Zuriel's is pretty good. Um, and then Vestas, the defense bonuses are kind of like a black chain body and black plate legs, while Statius is closer to like mithril plate body, mithril plate legs. So a little bit different there. So overall, this is going to be super interesting. I think the biggest thing with these armor sets is that 15% accuracy bonus to special attacks. I'll show you what that actually results in a little bit later, but that is really significant in specific situations. The next thing they talk about are the weapons, the Ancient Warriors' weapons. So Vesta's Longsword, Vesta's Spear, Statius Warhammer, Morgan's Javelins, Morgan's Throwing Axe, and Zuriel's Staff. A couple key things to point out here. So they're not any different stat-wise than the versions that were in Dead Man mode a couple years ago. They are untradeable. All of this stuff is untradeable, purchasable with bounty hunter points, and usable only in the bounty hunter crater. So that's kind of a common theme to all of these things. Um, they say similar to Vesta's Blighted Longsword, each of these weapons will require charging with 50 mil to become usable in combat, and this fee is lost on death to whoever killed you. I don't think they added enough detail here because I think people were asking on Reddit. They were like, "Oh, do you always lose that 50 mil?" I can't imagine that's true. I think if you protect the item, if you use like protect item and it's your +1, you don't lose the charge. You don't lose the 50 mil. If you do, that's incredibly stupid. So, speaking of incredibly stupid, I don't know if it's intentional or not. Talking about Vesta's Blighted Longsword, is there really going to be Vesta's Blighted Longsword and Vesta's Longsword? And Vesta's Longsword takes 78 attack to equip, and Vesta's Blighted Longsword is going to take 75 attack to equip, and they're the same exact stats, but the only difference being that the Vesta's Longsword can be used just in the BH crater, while the Vesta's Blighted Longsword can be used just in target worlds that, wait, used to be bounty hunter worlds? This doesn't make any sense. I really hope that um, they remove the Vesta's Blighted Longsword from the LMS shop. They convert all the old Vesta's Blighted Longswords that people have in their banks to Vesta's Longswords. They'll have to keep track whether they're charged or not. Maybe that's the tricky part. I think it's very delicate to deal with items that people already have and convert them into something else. I think that is something that they'll have to play with. But in my opinion, this kind of comes off as a bit of a lazy approach. They haven't exactly said what they're doing with target worlds, so we'll see what happens. I mean, target worlds are the only worlds that you can trade in your emblems from revenants. So I don't know what they're going to do with those. They haven't really outlined how that's going to be changing. I hope they're tracking it. I hope they're thinking of it because it's something that has to be tracked and changed. And they don't necessarily have a fantastic track record with keeping things with PvP up to date and making sense. But speaking of this next part, I don't like necessarily, but let me just read it to you. Something worth noting is that um, to make this charging system feel intuitive and consistent across all the weapons, which I don't know if it's that important, we've opted to make Morgan's javelins and throwing axes an infinite charge weapon, meaning you'll grab one javelin, charge it with GP, meaning the 50 mil, and then throw it as many times as your heart desires until you meet your untimely end. What this essentially means is that if you have one javelin, you have a million javelins. It's unlimited ammunition, and it is essentially your plus one. You have this javelin and or axe, and you throw it an unlimited amount of times, but it is your plus one, and if you lose it, you lose 50 mil. Yeah, what do you guys think about that? Right? That's not good. That should not be a thing. Um, like, are you really going to bring Vesta's javelins as your plus one? And again, just totally scoping this conversation to assuming they can only be used in Bounty Hunter, because they may not be usable only in Bounty Hunter in the future. They haven't directly said that, but that's been a huge feedback point on Reddit and Twitter that I've read about. My personal opinion is that they should be used outside of Bounty Hunter, but only in PvP combat. You don't want to affect any PvM type meta just because that has a bad track record. I'm not going to go into the detail right here right now, but you don't want to affect any PvM meta with stuff you unlock via PvP. That's you don't want to do that. Um, yeah. So, anyways, let me just go through these. These are the exact same stats as they are in Deadman mode, so I'm not really gonna and Last Man Standing for that matter. So I'm not really gonna outline them here. Vesta's Spear is kind of interesting. It has this effect in a multi-target area, but BH is single combat, so this isn't extremely useful. It has a slightly higher max hit and accuracy than the VLS, and it has a spec bar. So if the combat, well, let me just say this: if Bounty Hunter truly does block combat XP, Vesta Spear into Gmaul could potentially be a combo that you would do. I don't know. Like again, I really don't know what you could make out of these things. Pures could use these if Bounty Hunter truly blocks all combat XP, and you could still. I mean, Pures could use whips on controlled, right? Um, and so could Zerkers, where you couldn't before. So it's going to be strange what builds end up using in the Bounty Hunter Crater if they truly block combat XP. It's just going to be interesting. So the spear might not be as complete dead content as you might think. The Statius Warhammer, that's going to be kind of an interesting one for obby accounts. Only requires 78 strength to equip. So if you talk to any obby account, you'll know that this thing is pretty good DPS. It hits every 5 ticks for the Dragon Warhammer. I think is every like 7. Um, could be wrong on that. But um, yeah, pretty interesting uh, to have it hit like that. The Dragon Warhammer still, I believe, has a higher max hit than the Statius Warhammer. Um, but the Statius Warhammer is a harder hitting, I guess, bash weapon, just to smack your target with. So lowers defense by 30%. Honestly, man, I don't. I think that's so redundant with the Dragon Warhammer. I think they could have done something so much more creative than that, but they wanted to play it safe. I think the reason they're playing it more or less kind of safe with like familiar items that people have heard of before is because the PvP arena rewards failed so miserably, and that was so frustrating. If you look back, they actually a lot of them passed above 70%, and with that whole revision of, oh well, if things were at 70%, we consider them near misses, so we're going to repoll them. They didn't do it with the PvP arena rewards. I don't know why, but those were new items. A lot of like misconstrued, thoughts about those. A lot of just like misconception and just a lot of controversy. Everyone had their own opinion about them. People found a reason to vote no to them. I think they're just trying to play it safe just to try to appease people and have things ready to be, earned on release. PvP Arena launched with like no rewards. You had imbues, which are great. The imbues are great. Do I like having to imbue a ring every time I die with one? That sucks. But anyways, an imbue is great. The wave sacks and the surge sacks, those are nice too. I don't know why they're untradeable. They should be tradable, and if they're tradable, they shouldn't come from the PvP arena. So maybe that's another problem. But they don't want to launch Bounty Hunter with no rewards. So I think they're just trying to get some stuff to pass. All this stuff seems relatively safe. Um, but wait till I show you the effect of the armor on accuracy. Anyways, they have the Morgan's Javelin's Throwing Axe. Zuriel Staff gives some effects to different ancient spells, kind of as you expect before. Something to note here, Zuriel Staff 50 attack requirement. That's new. That was not there before. So I think before it was like a 78 attack requirement along with 78 magic. So that's a nice change. But if you can't use freezes in the Bounty Hunter Crater, if you can't really use NH, unless they make an NH creator, which they did mention, Magic is not really going to have a whole lot of use. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this one. Same attack rate as the Statius Warhammer, but hell of a lot less melee strength. So not even like, I mean, could 50 attack builds use this? They could, but they might as well use the Statius Warhammer, right? So I don't think this has much use if you can't use if magic is not very viable inside the crater. So, all right, weapon imbues. These are really interesting, and I want to talk about a couple of these in greater detail a bit later when I talk about Ruinous Powers. But they wanted to offer these weapons alongside the Ancient Warrior equipment. They're really fun to use in the beta. I'm not sure if I'll have like clips playing in the background at any point during this video. Probably just me rambling. That's it. But the few weapons they were looking to, I guess, add improvements to, and these improvements would be unlockable rewards from Bounty Hunter, would be the Dark Bow, the Barrel Chest Anchor, Dragon Longsword, Dragon Mace, and the Abyssal Dagger. So I'll quickly walk through what exactly is changing about these things when they get imbued. So, um, the Dark Bow has a accuracy increase from 95 to 105. The special attack cost is reduced from 55% to 45%. That opens up a lot of possibilities. You could do Debo spec to 2 throwing axes. That's going to be pretty good. You can do Dragon Knife spec to Debo and spec and then throwing axe spec. That could be good. You could do Debo spec to Gmaul. That could be good. Really, really interesting. But I think the biggest change out of all of this is both arrows fired by the special attack land at the same time. That is a big change, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. So a lot of people think the dark bow is shit, but it's really not because if you know how to use it, you can make both arrows land on the same tick every time. You just have to be a certain amount of tiles away. I might show a video up on the screen right now for those that are watching instead of just listening. But if you stand the right amount of tiles away, it's somewhere between like 2 and 3 tiles away, maybe one closer than like max range if you have like Dragon Knives or something like that. Your arrows will land on the same tick every single time. And if you throw a throwing axe, the tick after your spec, that will also land on the same exact tick. So if your max is 48, 48, 28, all that damage lands on the exact same game tick. So don't sleep on the Debo. It's really good. But the thing is, if you fire your arrows from like 10 tiles away, again, you'd have to refer to other footage here. I don't have it offhand, but your arrows do not land on the same tick if you're very far away. Or if you're at melee range, I believe they land one tick apart. So it just lets your opponent eat between hits. So that lets it be a bit more survivable. But to be honest, it's kind of balanced because the max hit is a 96 between those two. Like if you could just always same tick a 96 with a 900k weapon, That's a bit much, right? I mean, that you have to admit that's kind of a bit much. Imagine if you could hit a 96 with a volatile nightmare staff. That's essentially what this thing that's essentially what this bullet says. Both arrows fired by the special attack land at the same time. It should say regardless of range because or regardless of distance because you know, you can already make them land on the same tick, but you have to be a certain amount of distance away, and you can't always control that, and that's what kind of makes it balanced. But imagine if you had a volatile spec and you hit a 96. Now that's going to be the same thing. You're in a Debo spec from 10 tiles away. It's going to land on the same tick, and you might hit someone for over a 90. It's just I don't know about that part. I personally voted no to this one, but I don't want to sway your votes. You don't have to agree with me. I'm just trying to talk about stuff. Also, this is a big one too. I want to talk about this one. Um, these last two bullets. Minimum spec attack damage for dragon arrows increased from 8 to 10, and non-dragon arrows. Okay, 5. Okay, everyone's using dragon. From 8 to 10. That's big. That helps. And then this next part is interesting too. Special attack damage now rolls between the minimum and maximum hits rather than being clamped by it. This can be interpreted a few different ways, but I think this is what it's saying. If you have a dark bow right now and you spec with it, if you pass the accuracy roll and you actually hit your target, if your max in a certain gear setup is say a 50 for your certain setup, the dark bow caps damage at 48, but it will roll anywhere between 0 and your actual max hit. So it'll roll between 0 and say 50. That's 51 different possibilities, with 3 of those possibilities being a 48 or higher, being 48, 49, or 50. So your odds of hitting a max hit is 3 in 51. Now, with this change, I think it will only roll between your minimum and maximum hits. Your minimum is now a 10 instead of an 8, so it will roll between a 10 and a 48. So essentially, I think that's what, 39 different rolls. So your odds of hitting the max hit are now a 1 in 39 as opposed to a 3 in 51. And that math off the top of your head is the difference between a 2.6% chance with 1 in 39 and a like 6-ish percent chance 3 in 51. So, okay, long story short, you actually are less likely to hit a max hit with this new system. That's what this means if I'm interpreting it correctly. Your average hit will increase for sure. But if you can roll higher than a 48, this update actually makes it less likely for you to hit a 48. If your max hit is actually exactly a 48, this update will make it a little bit more likely for you to hit a 48, right? Because you are rolling, let's say your max was a 48 before, 1 in 49 was your chances of hitting a max hit. Now it's going to be 1 in 39, right? So you can see how that is increasing your likelihood of hitting a max hit. But if your max was actually higher than that, but it gets, capped down at 48, now your likelihood is actually significantly less than it was before. So is that a balancing change? I'm not entirely sure. Am I interpreting that correctly? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know what they mean by clamped by it. Um, I surely don't think that they removed the damage cap of the dark bow. That was not like that in the beta. So I don't think they did that, but I don't actually know. It's hard to tell exactly what they mean sometimes. Um, okay, so let's move on from this one. The barrel chest anchor. Let's talk about that one. So this one's for all the 60 attack builds out there who've grown tired of dragon weaponry. We want to bolster this Nautical Nightmares KO potential to help 60 attack builds punch up a little bit, while still leaving enough of a gap for the Armored Godsword to be a worthwhile unlock. This is interesting, guys. Okay, so crush bonus increased from 92 to 102. That makes it a bit more accurate. That's good. Strength bonus increased from 100 to 110. Okay, so it hits harder. That's a non-trivial amount. Attack damage increased from 10% to 25%. That's big. That is big right there. And as soon as I'm done going over what the ruinous powers are, I'm going to show you exactly how big that is. So if you want to skip to that, I'm gonna have a like little card that shows you the timestamp. But I'm gonna show you how crazy this is when I talk about ruinous powers. So wait for that. But that's huge. That is gonna be crazy good. Okay, Dragon Longsword. This was a little lackluster, not gonna lie, but I'll read it for you. Um, some jokes here, but yeah, okay. So our proposed changes aim to make the Dragon Longsword a viable alternative against higher defense targets, trading off max hits for higher accuracy and potentially momentum swings while facing off against troublesome tanks. Well, let's see how true this actually is here, okay? So stab bonus increased from 48 to 60, I'm sorry, 58 to 62. Okay, slash bonus increased from 69 to 75. Okay, that's not that much of a difference. Special attack now gains 25% accuracy. Okay, that could make a difference. That could make a genuine difference. And then special attack delays your next attack by 4 ticks rather than 5. So basically, it's a 4 tick weapon when you're specking with it. Um, so I guess kind of similar fashion to Dragon Dagger. They say similar fashion, but a Dragon Dagger can hit like an 80 while this can hit like a 50. So it's not really a great comparison, guys. Come on. I will show you on paper what this actually does to this weapon again when I talk about Ruinous Powers. Okay, Dragon Mace. This is the real weapon if you want to hit through defense. I'll tell you that right now. Dragon Mace. If you've always dreamed about crushing your opponent's armor and smashing them to pieces with a big red spiky mace, then you should probably seek help. Oh, just kidding. But you should also check out these slight tweaks to the Dragon Mace. Hee hee. Fucking love the person that wrote this. Okay, stab bonus increase a little bit, crush bonus increase a little bit. This is the big heavy hitter. Special attack accuracy rolls against 60% of your target's defense. That is really, really significant. If you'd like to be more or less, sorry, if you'd like to more or less recreate the Battle of the Trident, and we're not talking about Kraken uniques, then this might be the bullet point for you. Okay, I'm not totally tracking what that is, but I'm not the most cultured person in the world. So, anyways, yeah, rolls against 60% of your target's defense. So that is huge. And I will show you how huge that is, especially combined with the Vestas or Stadia set effects when I talk about Ruinous Powers. Okay, Abyssal Dagger. This one's also a really big one. So, for those of you that don't know, the Abyssal Dagger used to have a special attack consumption of 50%. Recently got changed to 25%, which makes it really viable for PvP, a lot more viable than 50%. Um, Stab bonus was increased from 75 to 85. That's a pretty significant change. That'll make a difference. And then special attack damage reduction adjusted from negative 15% to negative 5%. So for anyone that doesn't know exactly what that's talking about, you can poke with a dragon dagger, and then when you spec, there's two hit splats, just like the Dragon Dagger. In the case of the Dragon Dagger, when you spec with it, your spec hits can be higher than your poke hits. For the Abyssal Dagger, since it's so strong of a weapon to begin with, they actually had to reduce the damage, or else the spec would be way too high. So if you could spec with the Abyssal Dagger as is, your spec would be crazy high. But they actually had to add a damage reduction to it so that your spec would be not so game breaking. It is currently a negative 15% effect when you spec with it. So you can spec lower hit splats than you can poke with it, if that makes sense. But there are two hit splats when you spec. This is reduced from negative 15%. I'm sorry, this was adjusted from negative 15% to negative 5%. So essentially, you can spec higher with it. That's all that's saying. Okay, so these tweaks are small, but should give builds with 70 attack the option to use something that feels like a Dragon Dagger with a little more consistency, making those extra attack levels feel worthwhile. Uh, they say small. It's a really good change. It's a really really good really good change. Um, okay, and then they're talking about experience here. So this is essentially talking about something like pest control experience. I think this sounds great. Um, this was my recommendation, especially if they're going to block XP in the crater. Just some way to level your account while PKing. That's all you could ask for. So I think this sounds awesome. Now, negative XP lamps. I want to talk about this one for just a little bit. So I'll read this verbatim. The second thing that they're suggesting is the ability to remove a limited amount of XP via the same interface that the XP rewards that they were talking about above came from. These are intended as a means for players who made a mistake or two and might have gained some XP in a stat they weren't planning on. We'd like to offer lamps in increments of 10, 50, and 100 XP, allowing players to remove up to a maximum of 500 XP for combat skills on their account. This number might seem low, but ramping this up much higher might lead to players making use of unlocks to progress their accounts before moving themselves down to one defense. Something we're keen to avoid to try and keep everyone on a level playing field. Okay. I believe the way they're implementing it here is definitely not the best way it can be done, but I think it's probably good enough for now. Um, I don't love this approach. I actually honestly hate it, but I think it's okay. What this does, what someone can do with this that I can immediately think of is unlock Varrock Medium Diaries to get a teleport to Grand Exchange unlock and a Varrock plate body. Actually, it's three. They can do the Varrock Hard Diaries and then roll back that 500 XP they get from the Soul's Bane or a Soul's Bane, which gives 500 defense XP as their quest reward. So, will players that didn't mess up choose to do that to progress their account in ways that other accounts couldn't that did mess up? It's like that just doesn't sit well with me. Like, I don't think you should be able to apply this to Quest XP because Quest XP progresses your account, and anything that progresses your like this essentially goes into building your account, or it could, and it's not that significant. Like, if you have a maxed POH, like a player on house, then you have the best jewelry box. You have all the teleports. Right to the Grand Exchange. You could even carry a Ring of Wealth on you. It doesn't really matter that much. But the Varric plate body isn't even that significant either because if you're one defense, your likelihood of getting hit, your defense roll is so crap anyways. It doesn't matter. But it's just like weird jank, right? Like weird jankiness. And I try to suggest ways to avoid the jank, but I think Jagex is constrained right now because they want this to be ready on time for Bounty Hunter, and if they made it more complex, then they couldn't have it ready in time. And I guess I understand that. If that is the case, in an ideal world, what you could do is allow players to fix their mistakes and only their mistakes, right? Like, do not allow people to roll back quest XP. That shouldn't be a thing. Um, you could limit it to a certain amount. Um, if a player decided to say, "Oh fuck it, I'm gonna go be a Zerker after I got three defense," no, you shouldn't let them go back to one defense, right? Like that shouldn't be a thing. But if someone got like four or five defense or something, or six, if any non-quested defense, to an extent, maybe you should be able to let them roll that back because that if they didn't get it through questing, they didn't really progress their account, really, because they didn't really get any unlocks, because all the unlocks are driven by defense XP that comes from quests. So, anyways, allow players to do that, and then allow players to lock that XP so they literally cannot perform actions that would grant that locked XP, and then you're set. I mean, that's what you really need. That's what players really, really want. They want to be able to fix their mistakes and protect themselves from making the same mistakes forever. And to be able to do that, I think you need a more technically complex solution. Um, where official account builds it, maybe. I honestly think players were really harsh on that. I think we probably could have convinced Jagex to change things in a way that kind of tailored it to what exactly we wanted, but instead people just bitched and moaned about it on Twitter and Reddit just to say we don't want this with like no other detail, and then it got 1,000 upvotes, and then like Jackass was like, oh, I guess I don't want it. Like that sort of feedback is so fucking terrible. Like, yeah, it's short and sweet to the point, sure, but it's like, why don't you want it? Like the people that actually type out exactly why they don't want something, um, I personally much value reading that feedback rather than just I don't want this. Me don't want this. It's like you sound like a fucking 5-year-old. Anyways, long story short, I think this is obviously a band-aid fix, but I think it's probably good enough. I just wish they had more time and devoted more resources into making a better solution. But again, official account builds, maybe that could have been it. Okay, so cosmetics. These are pretty cool. Um, these are essentially art models that they had for corrupt dragon armor and weaponry. So these are pretty badass looking, especially like the mace and the scimitar. Battle Axe is kind of cool too. Honestly, all this stuff looks really, really cool. I mean, some of these stuff will literally never see use in PvP, but people might walk around and just flex this stuff. It's really cool looking stuff. Um, they actually mentioned things like halberd, two-edged sword, crossbow, claws, warhammer in here. So really, really cool stuff. I wish they maybe devoted some more resources into doing some more other things that were more practical for PKers to wear. Like they said they had asked to, you know, if they have limited scope and you can do any additional items, which ones would you want to see? And Neats Not Helm and Fighter Torso were the two that were most suggested. And I think, if you think of the grand player base, most of them are not Zerkers or Pures, right? If they're a main PKing in a typical edge style setup, a Neats helm and a fighter torso is what they got on. So it's not really a surprise to me that there was one. In a selfish way, I wish the Berserker helm was on there too, right? I wish Black D'Hide chaps were on there. For pures, I wish maybe leather bodies or something like that. I think that would be cool, not just Nissan helmet fighter torso. Like, who's gonna wear a dragon chain and dragon legs while PKing? Dude, no one. Like no one. And if they do, they're actually putting themselves at a disadvantage. Like that's the thing. Like Jagex needs to get that. If you want to show off cool cosmetics, it can't be at the expense of putting yourself at a disadvantage. Like, yes, I know this kind of sounds like efficiency scape, and I hate that kind of mindset, but at the same time, you want to like kit yourself out in effective gear. And if you can have like strength boosting gear, and you're gonna wear like ornament kitted dragon instead just for the fashion scape, like I don't know. I think it might be cool at first, then you're like, wait a minute, I'm losing my edge just to look cooler. Like I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Anyways, I think these are cool. I think the look of them is really, really cool. So they have some more questions. Other kits originally pulled with the PvP arena. Um, Elder Chaos robes. I guess they're not pulling the claws, but I guess Elder Chaos robes. The Granite Maul, which I personally think looks like crap, but again, that's just my personal style. I saw a different version of it. Imagine the Elder Maul, but with like a purple hue instead of orange. I think that looks sick, but this version, I don't think it looks that good. No, no offense. I'll probably just vote yes for it because if people want to use it, great, use it. But I don't think it looks that good. Um, Outer Chaos robes look sick. I don't know why they're not doing Dagonhai too. I mean, I guess that comes from the wilderness, so they don't want to do that. But so do Elder Chaos robes. So I don't really know why they're not pulling the Dagonhai too. I think the heavy ballista looks interesting. Um, I don't know. If people want to use it, go for it. It wouldn't be my cup of tea, but I'm not trying to block people from using cosmetics. High scores. Now, this one's interesting. So they're talking about whether or not they want to reset the high scores. Um, I'll just read it verbatim here. So, as a final point, we're asking you what you'd like us to do with high scores. This new iteration of Bounty Hunter differs a fair bit from previous versions, so we'd like to figure out exactly how to handle the pre-existing Bounty Hunter high scores. They're not able to archive the old results, so they have two options for us. Option one is just a new high scores table, and they're going to title it Bounty Hunter Creator, and they're going to leave the old Bounty Hunter high scores visible. So I guess they won't go away, but they're going to make a new high score. And option two is continue adding to the. Um, that's weird. We're not able to archive the old results, so we realistically have two options. I need to read this better. I don't know what they mean by this. We're not able to archive the old results, so we realistically have two options for you to choose from: a new table titled something like Crater and leave the old visible. So when they say they're not able to archive, but they're able to leave it visible, I don't know what that means because then they go on to say option two, continue adding points to the old high scores table, meaning some players will start out higher on the high scores than others. I mean, I don't get this. They're not able to archive it, but they can leave it visible. I don't really know what that means. That kind of contradicts itself. But anyways, um, I honestly wouldn't mind if they reset it. And I say that because I was like within the top 1,000 uh, rank when they removed the rewards from Bounty Hunter back in August 2020 or something like that. And since then, I've gone down like 300 ranks. You're trying to tell me that 300 people surpassed like 2,000 target kills in target worlds that are completely ghost town land ever since I don't know what the fuck ghost town land is. You know, they're completely empty, is what I'm trying to say. Um, after they got rid of all the rewards, like, no, I don't think so. I think weird completionist collection logger, I don't even think it's in the collection log, but people trying to get the hats, trying to boost for the hats, are taking over the high scores. And I don't like that. I think that's the stupidest thing ever. So because of that reason, it's been so long. I really don't mind if they reset the high scores, or not reset, sorry, but option one. I like option one. Um, just create a new high score. I think that'd be the best option to go with, just because it's just disingenuous having people on there that just boosted it up. You might have that again, sure, but for them to start out at a high rank, that's stupid. Okay, so that's it. You can go vote on it, and there we are. All right, on to the next topic, Desert Treasure 2. Um, the Fallen Empire. So let's talk about this for a little while. The main thing I want to talk about is Ruinous Powers, which is the new proposed prayer book coming with this quest. But I will say that this quest has a literal shit ton of rewards coming with it. Like it's kind of a lot. I don't know if I necessarily mind it, um, but it's a lot. So I just want to walk through a couple of the big things. So Desert Treasure 2, obviously the sequel to Desert Treasure, um, likely coming out this summer. So they recently had beta worlds to test all the new rewards, including the prayer book itself. And the bounty hunter rewards were in there at the same time. So it was a really good opportunity to test how good the bounty hunter rewards would be, together with the new prayers, at least at their current state. So again, I will say, total huge disclaimer, all of this stuff is totally like within flux right now. They have not actually pulled entry to the game of any of the Desert Treasure 2 rewards, just the Bounty Hunter rewards, and that only opened 3 days ago. So all the Desert Treasure 2 stuff, a lot of it is very much subject to change before they pull it. I just want to say that. But I do want to talk about what was beta tested. Okay, so this is all the stuff they added. So Ring of True Blood, Ring of True Shadow, Ring of True Smoke, and Ring of True Ice. These are direct upgrades to the Dagannoth King rings. And I guess from the way it was proposed, you'd actually need to consume those Dagannoth King rings and add them with something that is dropped from these new four bosses that are going to represent the, smoke shadow, blood and ice variants of the bosses that come from this new quest. So, um, pretty interesting. But that's what these rings do. Um, the magic ring gives actual, increased magic attack bonus, but it also gives 4% mage damage. So it's the first time a ring is getting magic damage. The Ring of True Blood, that's the pure strength version, essentially, gives plus 12 melee strength, which is pretty amazing. This ring that is essentially an evolution from the Warrior's Ring gives plus 12 slash and plus 4 melee strength. So a bit of an upgrade from the Warrior's Ring. And then this Archer's Ring improvement actually gives plus 2 range damage or range strength from from 0. So that's the first time that a ring is giving uh, range strength. So pretty interesting. Also, you have these ancient scepters, which are essentially, the reward from um, Secrets of the North, and you can attach a gem to each of these in the middle that basically make each variant of the ancient spells stronger in their own respect. Um, Below that, you see Virtus's armor right here. So this is essentially upgrading damage for ancient spells specifically here. So doesn't surpass ancestrals, except in the case of when using ancients. It also gives pretty insane effects to uh, each of the four variants of the spells themselves. So freezes are a little bit longer. You heal more for blood spells, smoke spells. I believe do more poison damage. Um, and shadow spells actually drain all combat stats, not just attack. That I think personally is kind of broken. But anyways, I'm not here to talk about these too much. Really here mostly to talk about the prayers. I do, yeah, that this Soul Reaper axe is kind of an interesting weapon. You essentially hit with a two-handed, this would, okay, backtrack a little bit. This Soul Reaper axe is essentially an axe that's created by combining these four pieces dropped by the post-quest bosses. So you combine all those pieces, they make this axe. It's not entirely clear, if this axe is totally coming to the game or not, or how much it drops on death, or if it's tradable or not, or what have you. Those details aren't really ironed out yet. But essentially, you hit with this weapon and you take damage. You can hit pretty hard with this weapon. I think it's like a 5 tick weapon. You can hit pretty hard with it. Um, and every time you hit, you take damage. But every time you hit, like you gain like a stack, and you can gain up to 5 stacks for consecutive hits. And every time you gain a stack, you can hit a little bit harder, but you keep taking damage. And then when you finally get up to 5 stacks, you can spec with it, and um, the spec essentially heals you for all the damage that you took and hits like one last time, like the uh, hardest possible damage potential. Um, I did not explain that very well. You can basically keep hitting harder until you use a spec, and then the spec is the hardest hitting of all those hits, and then you reset your stack count. So really interesting. Like I didn't get to test this one too much, but it was extremely accurate and it was pretty hard hitting. And yeah, I don't know. It was just overall a very interesting weapon. I wish I had some more time to test this one out. Okay, now I really want to get to talking about um, sorry, I should have shown this earlier, but this is the stats of the stuff if you want to see it. So, Ring of True Blood, plus 12 melee strength, so plus 4 B ring I. Ring of True Ice, 15 magic, 2 magic damage percent. I was wrong. I said 4% magic damage. That's not right. It's 2%. So, sorry about that. Ring of True Smoke, 2 range strength. Ring of True Shadow, 12 slash bonus, 4 melee strength. So, those are the stats. Sorry, I misquoted the Ring of True Ice magic damage before. Okay, Ancient Scepter upgrades. Again, so um, 50 attack to equip them, 60 strength, 75 magic. Uh, they give a buff to each of these. So the Blood Ancient Scepter heals more. Ice Ancient Scepter freezes for longer. Smoke Ancient Scepter poisons more. And then based off poison severity, essentially. So, and poison severity is going to come into play. You want to talk about Fumus's. I don't really know. Probably Fumus's vow. And then the Shadow Ancient Scepter basically just drains stats more, the attack level. So, Virtus Robes, again, these are interesting. 75 defense, 80 magic. When you have the set effect on there, you get some crazy effects. So, um, smoke spells reduce healing by 30% while your target is poisoned. That's kind of nutty. So if you have a food that heals 20, a shark, if if you're in combat with someone and you're wearing this full set effect and let's say they try to brew, Okay. They're going to brew. It would heal 16. 16 times zero point 0.7 is 11. So if you're poisoning them and they're spamming brews, those are each healing 11 instead of 16. Wow, that is really crazy. That might be too crazy. I mean, you say it's too crazy, but if Virtus is mega expensive, I mean, maybe not. But Shadow spells also drain strength, range, magic, and defense as well as attack. That's just batshit fucking crazy. That is really, really crazy. Again, I wish I had footage of me testing this in the beta. I just didn't have enough time to test all this stuff. You'll see why later. I was making something I'm going to show a little bit later. Blood spells can heal up to 20% over the player's max HP. That is really busted too. Wow. Ice spells have 10% additional accuracy against frozen targets. That's pretty good. That's not crazy good, but that is still pretty good. I think I think that one's maybe more balanced, just like a gut feel reading all through those. The rest of those seem really powerful actually, especially combined with like the scepter gems and stuff like that. Okay. So, yeah, magic damage only applies to ancient magics, right? But pretty good stuff. So let me just close these right here. I'll read through what this Soulreaper Axe is. I love that model, by the way. Placeholder. Okay, 80 attack, 80 strength to equip this new axe. Again, totally tentative at this point, but this is just what it does. Um, each of the four bosses fought after fought, bleh. Each of the four bosses you fight after the quest will have a chance of dropping an item that is used to make this axe. So the player must kill all four bosses to assemble it. I guess it's untradeable then. It must be untradeable if they're saying that, but they haven't explicitly said. Every time the player attacks with the axe, they will take 8 damage and gain a stack of the buff. For each stack of the buff, they will gain 6% bonus strength level, and the stack cap out at 5. Stacks cap out 5. So while equipped, the player has an overridden special attack bar that shows the number of stacks they have. They can use the special attack while they have one or more stacks to consume all their stacks to deal a bigger hit. The special attack gains 6% bonus accuracy per stack in addition to the previous 6% bonus strength. Regardless of the attack or not, the player will be healed by 8 times the amount of stacks consumed. So basically heals them for all the damage that they uh, were hit when accumulating those stacks. Players will not take damage if they cannot gain a stack, and don't gain a stack if they cannot take damage. Um, Players will not take damage if they cannot gain a stack. Okay, so if they're fully stacked, they won't add any more damage. They don't gain a stack if they cannot take damage. And don't gain a stack if they cannot take damage. Could you not take damage if they cannot take damage? So if you like Phoenix Next proc or something, or if you like Redemption proc, or uh, I don't fully understand how you don't gain a stack if you can't take damage. I don't know how you can't take damage, but anyways, that's just what it is. Um, Again, pretty strong actually, but I wish I had some more time to test this stuff out. I think they're going to be coming out with another beta. They closed the beta kind of recently because the prayers needed to be reworked. I don't think they wanted the people. I don't think they wanted people to have like a bad taste in their mouths or something like that. But they did rework it. Well, they're going to rework it potentially. Okay, Ruinous Powers. This is what I really wanted to talk about. Um, Now on to the most significant of all the rewards. They know this is the most significant part of all of it. The Ruinous Powers. So new prayer book, accessible by completing the quest. Does it have a defense requirement, you ask? No, it does not. As of right now, it does not have a defense requirement. And this is big. Like, you cannot do it on an Obby Mauler. I think that's important to highlight, but you can do it at one defense. I believe other requirements are something like, I think you actually need like 60 rune crafting. I did see that. I think you need 60 prayer as well. But again, these are not finalized by any means, so don't like take this to the bank or anything. Don't start training rune crafting. I'm just kidding. I'm sure they won't lower that requirement. That's gonna stay, which sucks. but they might lower the prayer requirement. I'm not entirely sure. Kind of depends on what players convince them to do, honestly. But get back to it here. So um, I'll just read through some of these because it's really important to talk about some of these. So the protection prayers, the overhead protection prayers, probably one of the most important aspects of the entire prayer book, especially for um, I guess both PVM and PvP. Okay, so deflect. These reduce damage from the appropriate style by 90%, 36% in PvP scenarios, but have a 50% chance to deal 10% of the pre-mitigation damage back to the attacker. Now, when these were voted on in the green light poll for the beta, it was a 100% chance to deal 10% of the pre-mitigation damage. So I don't know why they changed that, but they did change it. Just for reference, in case you don't know, of course, typical protection prayers protect you in PVM by 100% of the damage for the correct style, and PvP is 40%. So this is essentially protecting you a little bit less. I don't even know if that's entirely necessary, but anyways, uh, I meant the 36% in PvP. I mean, your defense bonus is going to be less anyways, just because. Anyways, yeah. So the exchange here is that you have chip damage against NPCs where you typically wouldn't, but you could deal some of that back to the attacker. So reducing it by 90% essentially means that if they're not going to hit above a 10, then you take zero damage. So it's not going to, you're still going to protect 100% from like small things trying to hit you, but if something big is trying to hit you, then if they hit higher than a 10, you're going to take some amount of damage. So if you have things like a Blood Fury, or if you're using like a Sang Staff, or anything that like passively recovers your hit points, you probably won't even notice this effect, to be completely honest with you. But I don't think, unless you're meleeing, you're not going to be able to make use of a Blood Fury. If you're using mage, you can use your Sang Staff, sure. If you're using range, I don't I don't think there's a great way to recover HP if you're using mage. I mean range, so you might be out of luck there. So anyone spamming T-bow is probably not gonna like this. And a lot of PVM is just spamming T-bow. So um, yeah, that's what this is. Um, Interesting. People don't like this. Uh, I will have some comments on this. I just want to read what they are just to get everyone up to speed here. If you don't already know, you probably do. But offensive prayers, so ancient precision. See, this is interesting. I'm just reading back, right? This is the rewards beta. It talks about ancient precision, but ancient precision did not come into the beta like this. Anyways, Ancient Precision, 20% plus attack. Ancient Strength, 20% plus strength. In the beta, these were merged into one prayer. And I think it was nice that they were. I think that's a good thing. So it was Ancient Strength in the beta, and that gave 20% attack, 20% strength. And just remember, one defense build can use this. Anyone less than 70 defense, anyone that couldn't use piety was stuck using incredible reflexes, ultimate strength, and steel skin, which are all 15% attack, strength, and defense. So these were buffs, but notice that there's no defense buff, defense bonus with these. Ancient Strength, which is 20% range attack, 20% range strength. Ancient Will, which is 20% magic attack. This thing called Trinitas, which is 15% attack strength, range strength, and magic attack. So it's kind of like all the 15% prayers wrapped up into one, except for the defense one. But it has a higher prayer level requirement than these other ones that I mentioned before it. And then you have the big three. You have Decimate for melee, Annihilate for range, Vaporize for magic. Decimate has 20% attack, which is the same as Piety, and 30% strength, which is 7%, additively 7% higher than Piety. Piety is 23% strength, Decimate is 30% strength. That's dummy busted high, but I will show you why later. Annihilate, same deal. 20% range attack, 30% range strength. Same story. Rigor is 20% range attack, 23% range strength. Annihilate is just higher range strength, but doesn't have any of the defensive perks. So again, Piety, Rigor, and Augury all have a 25% increase to your defense, where these main three don't. Vaporize gives 4% magic damage. That's what I was thinking of earlier when I was thinking about the ring. 4% magic damage from a prayer. It's the first time a prayer is giving you magic damage. That's pretty significant. And this 25% magic attack is the same that that augury gives you. So just something to think about. Um, okay, I'll move on to the overhead offensive prayers. These are all really interesting. So Gambit provides 8% accuracy to all styles when used. Um, just it's important to note that this is like a multiplier, not additive. So it's if used with Decimate, it's technically a 29.6% accuracy boost, not a 28%. So it's just something I don't know. I don't know if you care about that. I'll show you later. I basically made a calculator that I made all this quantitative results with. Anyways, just let's keep going here. Um, it's an overhead though, so just remember it's an overhead. So you can flick it on, but you're not going to have overhead protection if you put this on. This thing called Rebuke, where it increases your damage taken by 15%, but also reflects 15% of that damage dealt to you. So essentially, you can choose to take more damage, but it does essential reflection damage on to your opponent. So if you stack this up with a recoil and vengeance, and you hit your opponent on the same tick, we're talking massive damage. So this could be an interesting way to try to maybe KO your opponent when you don't have spec left. This could be interesting. So didn't get to fully test this one as much as I wanted to, but it's still pretty interesting. You can still have pretty crazy max hits. Well, people can have pretty crazy max hits on you, but you can very equally stack them out with a good time to vengeance and a counter hit. And then this thing called Vindication, which talk about more later. I don't like this one at all, but it's essentially retribution. I'm sorry, not retribution. It's redemption from the normal prayer book that when you're hit below a certain HP, you get some like grace period of immunity, and it heals you for a certain amount of your prayer level. I believe it's 25% of your prayer level. So this one heals you for less, but it also allows you to do 10% bonus damage on your very next hit after you proc this. So um, yeah, I don't know if I like this one very much, and I'll tell you more about it later. But let's just go to the next ones here. The Ancient Vows. These are really interesting. So I'm going to read through these. First off, the Crew's Vow, probably the least useful one, but I'll talk about it. While active, you have a 10% chance to to heal 10% of damage dealt. So this is effectively a 1% heal if you heal on the right hits. So 1% heal on average over time, which is pretty crap. I think Blood Fury is 6% on average over time, but that's only with melee. This would be all styles. So it's interesting, but at the same time, I don't think it's very useful. I think they should change it. But again, just reading these for now. You have Glacie's Vow. While active, you have a 20% chance to deal bonus magic damage, but this comes you don't have to be attacking with magic to deal this damage. It's kind of weird when you read it. This bonus damage rolls off your equipped style, doesn't have to be magic, right, against your target's magic defense, and this damage dealt is 10% of your initial hit, and in the beta it's stacked on the very same tick that your weapon damage registered on. So that's interesting. If you hit an 80 AGS, you're now hitting an 88 AGS. So yeah, something to say about this one, but I'll just save it for later. And then Umbra's Vow. This one, is the shadow variant of these vows here. While active, train your opponent's defense by 10% of your damage dealt. Umbra's Vow, um, respect the same limit as Shadow Spell. God, I can't talk. A Shadow Spells, meaning defense cannot be lowered by more than 50% of its initial value. So essentially, you cannot lower defense more than, like in PvP situations, you cannot lower defense more than 15% of your players like unaffected visible level. So if they have 45 defense, you can't lower it more than 15% of 45, or 85% of 45, whatever. So this reduction would apply before other defense reduction attacks, meaning there's still value in using this alongside something like the Dragon Warhammer. I think this is balanced really well. It's a shame because in the beta they actually didn't, that first line, while active, drain your opponent's defense by 10% of your damage dealt. They actually changed it to 5% in the beta. I don't know why. This is the beta block, but this is not entirely correct for some reason. So a little bit of a discrepancy, but this one's super interesting, especially if you need more accuracy on a higher defense opponent. You have this thing on all the time, and unless they're constantly drinking super restores, um, you can lower their defense pretty significantly. And then Fumus's Vow. So um, while active, attacks consume 10% of your poison severity to deal the same amount as bonus poison damage to an enemy. I like that they explain this one, so I'm just going to read it out. I think I fully understand what's going on here. So this one's a little confusing and perhaps best illustrated by an example, plus a look at how poison actually works in old school RuneScape. We'll use Hydra's poison pool for our example. When you're inflicted with poison, while it might look like a number that just says you're about to take this much damage, there's a little more going on under the hood. I love when they explain shit like this. Hydra's poison pool will inflict you with a poison severity of 30. Every time poison damage ticks, the damage you take is equal to poison severity plus 4, all divided by 5. So you take some damage, your poison severity decreases by 1, rinse and repeat. In this example, the poison that these pools will inflict you will deal 6 damage, since 30 plus 4 is 34, divided by 5 is 6.8, and they always round down in RuneScape to get you 6. With Fumus's Vow activated, your next attack after being inflicted with this poison will deal 3 additional damage, right? Because your poison severity is 30, and it's consuming 10% of your poison severity to deal the same amount as bonus damage. So, right, 10% of 30 is 3, and you reduce your poison severity to 27. So you're essentially getting rid of your poison quicker, um, and you're actually dealing it out as bonus damage. I think this is sick. I think this is so cool. You may have seen footage of the beta where it was totally bugged, but please don't let that warp your perception of how actually cool this mechanic is. Um, they even say it's cool, practical and cool. Yeah, so it actually gets rid of your poison faster and it gives you bonus damage. I think this is awesome. But I'll talk more about this one later. All right, lastly, the utility prayers. You have Ruinous Grace, which drains your prayer points instead of your run energy. Um, it's not affected by a thing like a stamina potion. You have Ruinous Smite, which reduces both yours and your opponent's prayer points by 33% of your damage dealt. This one's kind of crazy, especially the self-smiting aspect of it. So I'll talk about that one more later. You have Wrath, which is kind of like Retribution right now, but it deals, I guess, maybe larger damage in a higher area of effect. You have Rejuvenation, which gives you a bit higher um, HP regeneration, metabolize, which essentially, I'll read this one, but I'll explain a little bit more. Reduces your action delay, not your eat delay, by 1 tick after eating. So if you would eat some food and you would be allowed to attack 4 ticks later, if you have this activated, you'll be able to attack 3 ticks later. But you have to have this on for some length of time. You can't just flick it on, eat, and then be able to attack. So you have to have it on. So you have to have it like always on. Um, and it doesn't like give you like a visual indicator when it is fully, activated. So maybe they could change it. But anyways, it lets you rebound quicker after having to eat food. And I think this is really important for the spell book because you lack so much defense bonus that you're going to be getting hit more, so you're going to be eating more. So to be able to like, make a comeback and, shift momentum in a fight, uh, this change actually is pretty interesting. So I like this prayer a lot. And then Berserker, this is kind of like Preserve, but it's combat stats only. Um, and yeah, that's it. So this is essentially everything that they talked about. Now, I want to talk about these prayers a lot more in depth. Um, and I actually made a really freaking detailed blog about all this. So I'm going to bring that up on the screen now. All right. So this is a huge data dump of Um, some stuff that I made to really test how good these prayers and how good these bounty hunter rewards actually are like on paper. Because it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. If you're looking at some numbers on a screen and you're like, oh, it increased ranged attack from 95 to 105. Oh, it increased special attack accuracy by 25%. What does that actually mean? Like, how good actually is that? I hope, if you're going to watch any part of this video, watch this part because this is probably 2 hours into the video at this point, so fuck. But anyways, this should be some really interesting stuff. I put this on Reddit a couple days ago, and admittedly, it's probably past the time that most people are actually talking about this. But I wanted to put it on here because I think people should really be, taking a look at how good this stuff actually is to inform how they talk about it. So the first part of this I call factual content. All of this stuff is without opinion. It is just what it is. Okay. And then the last part, I actually give my opinions on it, and I talk about what I would potentially change with everything. So let's get right into it. The first thing here are like my assumptions. If you want to pause on this page and read it, you can. All I'm trying to say is I did my research. I know what I'm doing. Um, I I'm pretty good at math. I don't know what to tell you, but I essentially made my own calculator based off a calculator that I found online. That's a pretty, high reputation calculator. I double checked its functionality. I double checked references. I double checked stats. I double checked so many things. I don't even want to tell you how long it took me to do all that. But long story short is I think all the calculations in here are accurate. And I also validated stuff like new things with JMods in the background. Okay, so what the hell am I looking at here? First thing I did is I calculated damage per second for pretty average, um, pretty average setups for various different account builds. So I'll try to make this as big as possible here. All right, so what am I looking at right now? What the hell am I looking at right now? Damage per second. Damage per second, I'll just tell you right now, it's basically a combination of what is your max hit and what is your likelihood to actually hit your opponent. And all of those things are dependent on so many variables. But some of them are, you know, your max hit is informed by your strength bonus and your strength level. That's kind of it, and your stance as well. If you're like an aggressive hit or a defensive hit, that matters. Um, that is what goes into your max hit. That's not that complicated. What is your likelihood to hit? That one, that one's complicated because you have to calculate this thing called an attack roll, which is a function of a lot of things. It's a function of your stats, your gear bonuses, your prayers, your potions, and any additional effects that come from any certain weapons that you're using, your stance as well. Now, that gets rolled against your opponent's defense roll, and that is a function of levels, your stats, their gear, um, their prayers, their potions, and um, and even their stance. If they're in a defensive stance with their weapon, it actually increases their defense. So for all these, assume aggressive stance. So there's no extra defense from the stance on the ones below. But what I'm showing here, I'll take a minute to explain it. On the vertical axis is damage per second. And you get that by doing, what's your likelihood to hit, what's going to be your average hit based off of your max hit, and then what's your attack speed of your weapon. That's how you get damage per second. Those few things. And then on the horizontal axis, I have slash defense roll, right? So this is a slash weapon. This blessed Ceremoni's God's or blessed Sarah sword is a slash weapon. It rolls against your opponent's slash defense roll. I'm not specking with this. This is damage per second of just this weapon. Regular hits on a 75 attack pure with varying prayer level that will get you different combat levels based off of that. And 92, just so you know, was the requirement for Gambit in the beta. Again, very likely to change. Decimate was set at 76. Prayer, again, likely to change. But this is just what it was. I'm just showing you what it is. All right, so damage per second. So as you can see, what this kind of shows is this blue curve, this 15% prayers line, is essentially where pures are right now. And they can't use piety, of course, because they have less than 70 defense. So the 15% prayers are really where any build less than 70 defense is really at right now. So yeah, again, that's what this blue curve is at. So if you're looking at like pure versus pure, this lower left-hand build, this line at like 1700 defense roll, which is the gray curve that's going vertical here. This not curve, gray line going vertical here. The damage per second is about 8. And if you go up to decimate and gambit, it goes up to almost 9. So what does that really mean to you? Maybe not a whole lot. I have these lines plotted and labeled on the right-hand side. I call them the spam eat limits. And basically what that says is you need to be dealing 12 damage per second to essentially make your opponent eat an anglerfish every time they can. So if you're spam clicking anglerfish in your inventory, you will heal yourself 12 healing per second. So if you're doing 12 damage per second and they're healing themselves 12 hit points per second, which is what, spamming anglerfish equates to, then that's really high. You're going to notice that. But basically, anything less than that, this is eating an anglerfish every 4 ticks, and this yellow line is eating an anglerfish every 5 ticks. So obviously, if you're eating all the time, you can't really do damage back to your opponent, right? So obviously, you can combo eat. Of course, I'm acknowledging that. I just thought it would be helpful to put these lines so you guys can visualize what's high DPS and what's not. Also notice how these things fall off as you get higher defense levels. Um, I think it's just interesting to note the effect that Gambit has, right? Gambit essentially increases the difference between just Decimate and Decimate plus Gambit. Um, kind of only kind of over like a certain like regime. Like it doesn't mean it there's a point where it makes the most amount of difference is what I'm trying to say. So I think it's just interesting to visualize that. And this I hope this kind of just makes you understand on paper, damage per second wise, how different is it? You also see the max hits on the top. So as you get, towards this left-hand side, your defense roll is so low, your accuracy is almost 100%. So any increases from damage per second really come from increases of max hit. So that's where you're really seeing the difference on lower defense targets. Meanwhile, you get the difference, um, highest difference in accuracy uh, kind of near the higher defense targets. Also, I wanted to point out that, these two builds at the bottom, I just want to zoom in on these. These are the defense roles. These are the exact same setup. One player is using Piety, which has a 25% defense boost. One player is using Decimate, which has no defense boost. Look at the difference in defense roll. 6,400. That is pretty significant. I mean, DPS wise, you're not really going to see a huge difference. I mean, that is basically this line right here and this line. And that is a pretty big difference in defense roll. So if you look at like DPS, it may not look like a lot, but I'm going to be showing plots later where it shows your likelihood to actually hit. So the likelihood that your attack roll passes the defense roll and that you actually hit your target. And you're going to see that, this makes a pretty big difference. So I'm going to keep scrolling down. I'm just going to show you some different examples here. Here's another one of, a 20 attack build now using an Abyssal Dagger and just poking with it, right? So again, you can see the differences here against different builds. Again, these are stab defense rolls now, just because it's a stab weapon, so you're gonna roll against your stab defense roll. Again, a max hit of a 46, just poking with it, and this isn't even like fully kitted out gear. I mean, you could have a B ring on. Um, that might be your only real significant upgrade to this setup, actually, but um, this isn't even like max right now. So these are pretty high hits for a combat level of, I mean, 97, you could argue maybe that's balanced, but it would be a little bit too high in my opinion. So I'm just going to keep scrolling through some of these. I think this one's interesting. So Morgan's 20 defense, hitting 25s with throwing axes. I'm sorry, with throwing knives here. Um, let's see. I don't know if there's much more to point out, but Dragon Knives go freaking hard. That's all I'm gonna say. DPS is pretty damn high. Like you look on this, it's almost it's almost a full one higher DPS than using melee against like zero defense. So pretty interesting. Look at a 60 attack Zerk here, hitting with a scimitar, 46 scimitar hits. That is pretty high. And this is not even like fully max. Like no Infernal Cape, none of the Vesta's armor that you could use, none of the Corrupt Vesta's armor. So um, just interesting results here. Keep scrolling down. For a like a med level using Piety and a whip, here's the differences you get in DPS. Not really a whole lot. I mean, your max hits do go up a little bit, but yeah, in this particular instance, your max hits are pretty high. I mean, 49 whip, not even risking a B ring. Uh, that's pretty high. Also using a glory, not a strength amulet. So I don't want you to be I don't want you to perceive that it's not that much of a difference. I am trying to show like kind of realistic gear here. So just just take this for instance. Um, Also notice that you don't gain that many combat levels if you're a med level because you already have pretty high prayer in the first place, right? You're probably already like at least 70, probably like 77. So you're not really going to gain that many prayer levels if the prayer requirements stay as is, which I don't think they are. But anyways, that's the difference there. Um, yeah, the DPS difference here is totally just due to max hit, just because Piety and Decimate have exactly the same hit chance, because they're both 20% attack. Scroll down a bit more here. Show it now for this one's interesting. If you look at Dragon Knives on a 78 defense, 99 range, kind of like void tank or a range tank using elite void versus using full Morrigans. Um, it's actually pretty insane. Like the range bonus of Morrigans is pretty significant along with the max hit increase over void for dragon knives. So this is pretty significant. Um, it's also kind of interesting to note that this guy's 75 defense in Void actually has less range defense than this Zerker in melee gear. Just kind of interesting. But anyways, yeah, range kind of just shreds. So that's all I got for DPS, but now you go to hit chance. This is where the really interesting stuff comes in. So I'm going to be showing all the different bounty hunter proposed rewards here. So um, if you look at hit chance for, here we go. Look, if you look at hit chance for something like a Granite Maul, right? This is one that I was really interested to see, like how much would this new Statius armor make a difference for a 20 attack, or sorry, 20 defense account with 50 attack? And you can see that, of course, this is, per hit, right? So per Gmaul hit, this is the likelihood you have to actually hit your target. So to hit more than a zero. And of course, if you do pass the accuracy roll, you can still hit a zero, but it's very rare. But I'm just saying, like, this is the percent chance that you're actually going to be rolling damage on your opponent. So before with the 15% prayers, let's just say against a Zerker, right? Against the 18,000 defense roll, you had about 33% chance for your Gmaul to actually hit. And that's okay. I mean, if you spec twice, you square that number. So 33% chance times 33% chance, it's about like 12% chance that you actually land both Gmaul hits on a Zerker. Now, with something like Decimate and Gambit and the set effect of Statius, that 33% chance against a Zerker for a single hit goes up to like 46, 47% chance. That is really significant. So I think it's just valuable to, I don't know, realize that change. So, again, against one defense, I think this just goes to show against one defense, you literally have a 100% chance to hit if they have no defense bonus. So I hope this is helpful to just visualize this. I'll show a couple more and then I'll move on to the next thing I want to show, which is basically a compilation of all the max hits that you're going to care about. So this is hit chance for a dark bow with a 20 defense account, now using all the Morrigan's armor and the imbued dark bow. The imbued dark bow in itself doesn't increase damage, but it does increase accuracy a little bit. So a lot of curves here. You can see it makes the most amount of difference against higher defense targets, which is nice and interesting because your accuracy is already pretty high against lower defense targets. But for example, I mean, right here against someone who has, take for example this this med level, but using piety, 28,000 defense roll. Your percent chance of hitting him with an arrow was about 52% chance. With all these set effects combined, and Annihilate and Gambit all stacked up, and this also isn't even taking into effect um, any effects from uh, Umbra's Vow too, which can lower your opponent's defense. Uh, your percent your hit chance for this spec goes up from, again, around 51, 52% to like 65, 66%. So that is really, really significant. And I just wanted to show that on this, I guess, graph right here. So yeah, max hits, an account like this is going to be able to hit a 48-48. So that is crazy. I mean, before an account like this, look, I mean, look at the progression of max hits. Progression of max hits, 40-40 to a 48-48 in this gear, right? I'm not using an Anguish. I'm using a Glory. So this is pretty significant. I think these max hits are kind of crazy, but kind of interesting at the same time. So now we have a Zerker using a DDS. So right, in this gear, not insanely expensive gear, you're gonna be hitting a 46-46 with greatly increased accuracy. Again, this accuracy is per like hit splat of the dagger. So, against another Zerk, 19,500 defense roll, where one hit splat had the chance of hitting about 37% of the time. Now you're hitting 52, 53% of the time. So that is really significant. Of course, square that number, and that's your chance that both hit splats actually hit your target, because the DDS, of course, hits twice. But just really interesting stuff to look at here. Next, with a Dragon Mace, this one is probably the most interesting of this entire thing. Um, hitting I mean, your accuracy increase goes up tremendously. And I double check this. This is from that, remember, it rolls against 60% of your target's defense roll. So if it's rolling against 42,000, it's actually rolling against 60% of that. And then Vestas also gives a, attack roll multiplier because, for special attacks, it gives that set effect. So all in all, you're hitting way more accurately on defense, like way more accurately. And your max hit goes up to be, it was from a 57 in the standard gear here, goes up to a 66. And you can attack, every 4 ticks with this weapon. This is going to be a defense buster when this is in the game. So I'm super excited to use this, um, if it passes the poll. If all this stuff passes the poll. So again, I don't know for sure if I'm on board with 30% strength from Annihilate. I don't think I am, but talk more about that later. This is all supposed to be factual stuff. This is actually what, on paper, the hit chance for this different weapon here. Orbital Godsword, give you a second to look at this. Notice that it's already very accurate. I mean, Orbital Godsword, as you know, the special attack is very accurate. Makes the most amount of difference at the higher defense levels because that's the point where I guess it starts to overcome the attack roll starts to uh, drop below what the defense roll is. That's where the bend in the curve typically is for these plots. But you can see it makes a pretty big difference at the higher defense levels. Also, 72%, I mean 72 max hit to an 82 max hit, just with a fire cape, climbing boots, and just strap the Vestas on there with decimate. That's so high. But 1 of 4 combat, so I mean maybe that balances itself out. Um, but I mean, take off Gambit and you're less than 1 of 4 combat, right? You can stop at 76 prayer. So something I actually meant to show earlier was these results for the Barrel Chest Anchor imbued and the Dragon Longsword imbued. So just quickly walking through this really, really quick here. I just calculated this a couple minutes ago. These are the curves for the Barrel Chest Anchor. So main takeaways here, accuracy boost is really significant. This is kind of like this turns into almost like an AGS for a 60 attack account. The accuracy is seriously considerable. The max hit goes up pretty significantly from unimbued to imbued. I mean, we're talking 51 to a 62 now. So that is really significant. Being able to hit that again at like 94 combat is really meaningful. And then your accuracy as well, even with 15% prayers, um, is really high. So we're talking like against a Zerk, it's like 75% hit chance, where if you have a DDS, it's like I don't know, like a 30% hit chance. The fact that hitting both specs is even less. It's like a 15% hit chance or something crazy like that. Go back and reference the slide if you actually want to quote me on that. But so, okay, so that's for the anchor, and then for the dragon longsword, this is what you get here. So it definitely does help against lower defense targets, and the Vestas really does make a pretty big impact against honestly against Zerks. Like near that 20,000 defense roll, I think it makes probably the biggest amount of difference against that range. So overall, pretty good changes, and I could definitely see myself using these in the future. I do think though that I would definitely take a Dragon Mace over a Dragon Longsword any day. I don't know. I feel like the Dragon Longsword is just kind of a subpar version of a Dragon Mace. I don't really see a fit for both these weapons. I'll vote yes for both because variety is cool. But if you're using the Dragon Longsword, just know that the Dragon Mace is better. So I think Dragon Longsword could be nice for Pures, right? Because Pures can't use the Dragon Mace. I think that's probably where this fits in the best. Keep scrolling down here. Derek's Axe. I just want to show that if you're 50 HP out of 99, um, your max hit is going to go up a little bit, so 72 to 75. So you can essentially not sit as low and still hit high, which is interesting. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of it. This isn't like max strength gear by any means necessary. You're using Barrow's gloves, not ferocious. Dragon boost instead of prims, um, and glory instead of a strength amulet, and then no berserker or anything like that. So this is not max by any means, but you can hit pretty freaking high at 50 HP. But anyways, compared to Pies, I guess it's not obscenely crazy. You can see the accuracy difference from Piety is absolutely nothing. Um, just because Piety and Decimate have the same exact accuracy, 20% attack bonus. But if you put Gambit on there, it does help it out a little bit. But overall, not that noticeable. So I mean, against someone in you know uh, Bandos with Piety, 42k defense roll, um, it's not really that impactful. Okay, so now this is like max. PKing with Torva here, like absolutely maxed. Comparing if you're wearing Vestas or not, you can see that your special attack chance goes up pretty significantly. And just note that this is, if you pass the accuracy roll once, both hit splats pass the accuracy roll. So it's different than the Dragon Dagger in that respect. This is the imbued version as well. It's a little bit higher accuracy than the regular version. Um, and your specs can go up to 52, 52 in Vestas. I mean, it's really high. It's really high. Probably too much. I mean, if you're realistically, if you go out in this setup, why would you not just 4x spec someone, right? You're probably going to kill them. I mean, you're probably going to kill them. Odds are. Like, combine this with the Vengeance or a Gmaul or anything like that. I mean, I just think it's too much. You are risking a crap ton. Um, Probably not that much, though, because Vestas is only 5 mil a piece. So if your plus one is a Torva's Helm and you go out in this setup, you're risking Prims, Ferocious Gloves, that new ring. Who knows how much that's going to be? You don't need a torture. You can have a strength amulet. You're not really risking much more than that. A Vernix not that much lost on death. Abyssal dagger. I don't know how much the abuse is going to be. And your plus one's probably your Torva helm. You're probably risking like less than 30 mil, and you can have these max hits. So just think about that. That is kind of crazy. All right, next page focuses on max hits, like max hits for certain builds. And this might be a little eye-opening. So I'm going to show it with Ultimate Strength, and then Ancient Strength, and then Decimate. So this is for pure and absolute max gear. Of course, your attack levels can range for this build that I'm considering from 50 to 82. Maybe you want to use a Fang, I don't know. And then your prayer levels ranging from 31 to 76. 76 just for decimate at this point. I mean, yeah, decimate at this point. But again, that's not confirmed. It might change. But yeah, here are the max hits. So I am using this new ring. So if some of these are a little different than what's actually in the game, that is why. So you can't hit a 39-39 currently in the game. It's 37-37. But this new +4 above Berserker ring for this new ring enables a 39-39. But anyways, these should be pretty close. So yeah, 42 to 47 Gmaul. That's a lot. 39 to 43 as for a DDS. That's a lot. Um, this is a, oh gosh, what is that? That is a 73 to a 82 for claws, 73 to 83 for an AGS, 58 to 65 with an Elder Maul, and then 64 to 72 with a Void Waker. So again, I just want to stress that the only reason this gap is so high is because Pures were never allowed to use Piety, right? And it's like, some weird defense level restriction. I guess I understand it because it offers a defense boost. That's why it has a defense requirement. Yada yada yada. It wouldn't make a difference for Pures anyways. But that's why this difference is so big. You'll see that when I scroll down to Piety, the difference is not as big, but it is still pretty significant. I do think Pures should be able to hit higher. I do, especially if it comes with the consequence of higher combat level. It just makes sense. But I don't know. This might be too high, guys. This just might be too high. All right, now looking at ranged, Light Ballista goes up to a 67. Debo goes up to a 48-48 max hit on accurate. MSB goes to a 30 with Amethyst arrows. Dragon Throwing axes go up to a 28. And then, as shown before, these axes go up to a 24. Actually, maybe I showed this for 20 defense before, sorry. This does assume the new ring, so this does give +2 range strength. I didn't really find it to impact too many things, though. I think it impacted like MSB max hit and maybe dragon knives and dragon axes, but anyways, not by a whole lot. It maybe adds one max hit, but not a whole lot. It's really the prayers that do a ton. Okay, a Zerker. Yeah, 52 Gmaul. Again, I mean, you're fully kitted out here, but 52 Gmaul, 49 DDS. Um, yeah, 89 Dragon Claws, 90 AGS if you use it on Crush mode, a Crush style with Inquisitor set, 69 Elder Maul, 79 Void Waker. Just some really insane hits. I mean, if we're being honest, those are just really high. Um, put on some Void equipment, 80 Ballista. I mean, to be fair, I think 80 Ballista. Ballista actually used to be this strong. Ballista with Void actually used to be this strong with Augury. Sorry, with Rigor, but it got nerfed. Void got nerfed and Rigor, and the Ballista got nerfed, I'm pretty sure. Actually, maybe it was just Void. I think it was just Void. But anyways, you can hit up these crazy max hits with Debo. Of course, it's capped at 48-48, but if you don't use the imbued version, you have higher probability to hit a 48-48 if your true max is a 54-54. So, um, just these maxes are just pretty significant to note. And now with just full Torva here, these are the absolute max hits in the game. This is what I call max max. So you can hit some of these at as low as 105 combat with Piety, but if you get a little bit higher than that, you could do different. So, anyways, 54 Granite Maul, 52 DDS. Again, same for Abyssal Dagger imbued. Um, yeah, that is a what 93 Dragon Claws, 91 AGS, 71 Elder Maul, 84 Void Waker. Just some pretty insane hits. This doesn't take into account the effects of, if you have Rebuke and you're up against an opponent like this, 15% extra damage, you can do the math. Yeah, you're gonna die. And like Rebuke is something to use when your opponent doesn't have spec or something like that. But anyways, Vindication, stuff like that, doesn't take into account any of those. It's just these prayers. So pretty damn high. And then these would be the max range hits in the game. Um, if you have defense, your max hits go up a little bit compared to if you only have 45 defense, but honestly, not by a ton. So you have a couple things like this Odium. I'm sorry, gosh, Odium. I'm out of it. Twisted Buckler um, gives some more max hits for things like uh, Dragon Knives. 30 Dragon Knife. Oh my gosh, 35 Dragon Axe, Dragon Throne Axe. That is just so much. That is so high. Um, and yeah, that's the full story. These are facts, guys. These are facts. All right, this is actually a really interesting. Um, these are really interesting plots. This is essentially the calculator that I made. This is the interface for it. Again, it's adapted from one, but this shows you have basically the loadout for each account build on the left, and then the right shows your output. So it shows the max hits for each build, the accuracy on on each other, and your spec accuracy again on each other. And then it gives you DPS from there. It gives you PDPS, which is your prayer drain per second on your enemy, so on your opponent. For example, it's just this divided by 4 because I'm using Smite. And on the right-hand side for player 2 versus player 1, it's this divided by 3 because you're using Purge and not Smite. So um, then you have all the different prayers that are active. You can do vows even. I set this up to work with vows. So basically, the main takeaways here is, although you're using Decimate on this one account. I mean, these are one for one exactly the same setup, but even though you're using Decimate on the one account and Piety on the other, the player with Piety actually beats the player with Decimate in damage per second. This just shows that, the defense bonus of Piety is definitely not negligible. Um, and it actually makes a difference against someone using Ruinous Powers because the person using Ruinous Powers does not have these defensive bonuses. Um, let's see. Also, the prayer drain rate is pretty high. So this total PDPS takes into account things like, it says down here how much you're draining your own prayer by having prayers on, how much you're draining your own prayer from doing things like purge, how much your opponent is draining your prayer from things like smite and purge, and also if they're using corruption as well, that could, greater corruption that could also add some more prayer drain on you as well. I didn't add that on the calculator. I don't think it was relevant. So let's see, scroll down a little bit. Now, the person using Ruinous Powers puts on Umbra's Vow. So, before their DPS on their opponent was 3.34. Now, since they put on Umbra's Vow, now it's 3.86. So it's very close to matching. But again, this assumes, again, Umbra's Vow is the thing that drains your opponent's visible defense level by 15%. So with Umbra's Vow activated now, you can tell that this defense reduction did make a difference. So again, if the other player just drank a super restore, then these results would not be valid because it kind of negates the effect of Umbra's Vow. But it just shows how this works. Now, notice that when this player using Ruinous Powers has this Vow activated, their prayer drain per second is it's getting up there. I mean, 3.74 uh, prayer points drained in a single second. That's gonna be that's pretty quick. um, Now using Gambit instead of Purge, the DPS of the guy using Ruinous Powers finally overcomes the person using Piety. So using all these things together, again, the other person just can't drink a Super Restore or else this is invalid. I just want to show these different scenarios. The main thing I'm trying to communicate here is that, if you have a high defense account using Piety, actually puts you at an advantage over someone using Ruinous Powers as they are right now. So now I'm comparing two different Zerker builds. I adjusted them to be the same combat level. So this one account on the right using Ruinous Powers does not have 99 strength and does not have 99 HP, but they do have 92 prayer to use Gambit. So they still do have a max hit increase or advantage just because Decimate is such a high bonus. But they don't have a DPS bonus because, well, you could blame that on well, actually, in this case, that's totally the blame on accuracy. Because that other Zerker is using that 15% defense prayer, they still maintain DPS advantage over the other account. So now if the Ruinous Powers account starts using Umbra's Vow, that changes, right? That defense reduction makes a difference. They gain the DPS advantage now, but they have a huge amount of prayer drain. I made a point to say here that a prayer potion's plus 30 restoration would be consumed in less than 8 seconds for that player using Ruinous Powers. So pretty high prayer drain rate, but that is likely justified. Um, Now, next, of course, just using Gambit now, you can see the player using these combinations further surpasses. But again, all the other player has to do is drink a Super Restore, and that may not necessarily be the case. All right, so I want to show this slide as well. This is essentially prayer drain rate for a bunch of different scenarios at a bunch of different prayer bonuses. Now, I saw a lot of people saying that the prayer drain rate for Ruinous Powers was so much higher than it was for standard prayers. And I just want to add this perspective here. So, if you're using like every prayer under the sun in the Ruinous Powers book, yeah, you're going to see some prayer drain rates like 130 points per minute. That's what these numbers are, points per minute. Um, and that's assuming no prayer bonus. So 130 points per minute with no prayer bonus. At the like most extreme extent, that is higher than Ruinous Powers. I'm sorry, that is higher than standard prayers. I'm looking at the lowest standard prayers right here by about a factor of 1.7. So it's not double. It's certainly not triple, but about 1.7. So that's the main difference. Now, if you don't use Berserk, if you don't use Metabolize, if you don't use a Vow, um, looking at the same apples to apples comparison, right? You have Smite, and then you have your offensive prayer, and then you go down here, you have Smite, and then you have your offensive prayer. You're comparing 76.67 to 86.67. Now, I know Purge has a self-smiting effect, so I don't want to totally count that out. But just the drain rate itself, um, it's not that different. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure everyone sees this. When I say everyone, I mean how many people are watching this video at this point? Was this like a 4 hour fucking novel? Anyways, it's not as bad as it seems. So just keep in mind that don't believe everything you hear on Reddit, even though it might feel like a lot from a dev perspective, it's actually not that much. All right, this last section and definitely the last part of the video, like, oh my God, this has been like a fucking marathon. The last part of the video, I'm going to focus on opinionated content. This is just purely me speaking based off the facts that I've presented, based off of, what this is looking like. Um, I am going to make some recommendations to change these. So I think it's, overall, first and foremost, I think it is definitely important to recognize that the absolute max hits right now in best in slot gear, max stats are already very high without Ruinous Powers, without Decimate, without any of that. They're already very high. If you have 30% strength and 30% range strength, um, making that max hit potential significantly higher, uh, it makes more of a difference for Pures and Zerkers, of course, because those are previously capped at the 15% prayers. Um, but I think that's probably dangerous for the game. Um, I do really want to emphasize that this 20% attack boost from Ancient Strength and Decimate match the 20% attack boost from Piety. So any increase in DPS you see on a main account purely comes from the max hit increase. Again, because the accuracy is the same. Gambit does give a bit of a DPS boost, but it's not really that much. You can go back and look at those graphs. It's not much. It's like 0.1 or 0.2 DPS coming from Gambit. So your main source of DPS is actually coming from max hit. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I think there's definitely some room to improve accuracy and not crank max hit up too much. So my statement here, so in my opinion, these damage buffs are too high and the accuracy buffs are not high enough. I'd much rather see the lower tier offensive prayers offer a small accuracy and damage boost above the 15% prayers And the higher tier offensive prayers continue in that same direction with respect to Piety, Ray, or Augury. So you could have Ancient Strength sitting at 20% attack, 18% strength. You can keep the 61 prayer requirement. I think that's actually okay. Maybe change it. I'll show at the weigh-in what I'd say a balanced book looks like, but then Decimate could be 30% attack, 25% strength. I didn't make plots of those. I don't have. There's only so much time in the day, but I just think that you have some room to play with accuracy, and max hits are just too high. I mean, you could balance them differently for PVM and PvP. I just think there's a solution that satisfies both, and I think you should go do that. All right, let's go down here. All right, overall recommended changes. I just want to point out. Um, let's see. Yeah. All right. Overall changes. Uh, Protect item. I think this is huge. So the core. I'm just going to read these. So the core theme of Ruinous Powers is the idea of exchanging something for offensive power. Offensive power is typically measured as a combination of max hit and damage per second, and of course DPS is a function of max hit. So, as currently proposed, some attributes of the Ruinous Powers are things like sub 100% overhead protection in PVM, referred to as chip damage, higher prayer drain rate, and as currently proposed, lack of protect item. Protect item, I cannot emphasize enough, is huge in PvP. It enables the use of many powerful KO weapons that you wouldn't typically otherwise use, like an AGS, Claws, a Volatile, and a Void Waker, or like anything else worth over like 10 mil. So just put it like that. Without protect item, I personally predict that players will be very reluctant to risk something like an AGS or anything over 10 mil when a much cheaper weapon could do the job, like an inexpensive dragon weapon, like a DDS or an imbued D Mace or something like that. Um, or even hell, just a granite maul paired with like a colossal blade. I think players will overall risk less. And the players that were already risk and bank, let's say like Deep Wild, they'll go from risking 45 mil to maybe like 60 mil. So is it that impactful? I mean, maybe you could look at that and say, oh wow, that's totally that's balanced. They should risk more. Um, I don't entirely agree with that. I just don't entirely agree with that. I think part of the thrill of someone having a plus one is trying to get it. And if you, no one's going to have a super overly valuable plus one. They're going to bring a bunch of items that are about the same price, and their overall risk is not going to go up very much. That's just what I predict. So without protect item, especially, I mean, in edge style fights, there's just no reason to smite your opponent. And smites, at least for me, are a huge part of the excitement for edge style PvP. So without smites, I think that kind of that kills off a big part of the excitement. Um, at the same time, if everyone's 90 prayer, I mean, that's why prayer drain is so necessary, right? Because if everyone's 90 prayer, no one's going to get smited. And if you take smite out of the equation, that just sucks. That is taking out one of the elements that makes the fight exciting. You're not going to fight some noob in a Void Waker if you know you have 0% chance of smiting his Void Waker. There's always a chance, right? And it always makes you kind of like enticed to try it. Anyways, this concept called overprotection was this prayer that was offered for the ruinous powers that would have behaved like this. Protect two extra items upon death, but drains prayer points by 25% of damage taken. It's basically like someone is always smiting you regardless of what they're praying. That's what that is. So I personally wish we could have tested overprotection in the beta because I don't think people really understood how devastating that prayer drain effect would have been when combined with what your own prayer drain rate, the self-infliction effect of purge if you're doing that, and any smite or purge or corruption effects coming from your opponent. We're talking massive prayer drain. If all those things are added, linearly or whatever, direct addition to each other, right? You have 25% from overprotection. You have 33% of your own purge. You have maybe 33% of an opponent's purge, and then you possibly have corruption. So I don't know how much corruption is on like a prayer drain per second thing. I think it's 18. No, it's what is it? I think it's 12 prayer points over 18 seconds or something like that. Because it goes like one, two, and then three. No, it's that's so stupid. It's six prayer points over 18 seconds. It's like it's laughable. But anyways, can't believe it's only that low. But anyways, it's 33, 33, 25. That is 66 plus 25. That's 91% of the damage taken, or dealt in that case, because it's self-infliction, effective purge, is taken off your prayer. That is so big. That is so big. Combined with your own prayer drain rate, right? That is so huge. So, anyways, I think there is some design space here that I really want Jagex to look into. Um, why did I just say it like that? I'm tired, guys. It's like midnight. I've been talking for like 4 hours. Anyways, I think these are two really interesting concepts right here. Names are TBD. I don't really care what they're called, but some lower tier protect item prayer that works like this. So while it's active, you get one extra item on death, but 10% of any damage taken is removed from your prayer points. And it stacks additively with smite, purge, etc. So it's kind of like overprotection, but not as crazy. And it's only one item, which you would perhaps feel more comfortable using rather than trying to be super greedy and get away with two extra items. So this next one would cost 10 prayer points to activate it, so you can't just flick it on scotch-free. And then two extra items on death. Hear me out. 20% of any damage taken is removed from your prayer points. So again, I think you're really sleeping on that permanent 20% drain. If you're in an NH fight, imagine your opponent is smiting you the entire time, but they're actually not. But when they actually are, it's even crazier smite effect. And you have high prayer drain. Like, I'm telling you, I don't. You think, oh, people protecting two extra items on death is overpowered. Like, the odds that you smite them are significant. Like, I want people to test that and see how significant that would actually be, because that would be, I think, stronger than people think, and more likely than people think. Okay, I'm gonna go past this one. God, I'm rambling so fucking much. This is called a ramble. This is a ramble video. Okay, overhead protection. Um, so basically, these are frustrating to work with because if you play perfectly, you're not as rewarded as you were with the typical overheads that negate 100% damage in most PVM situations. So that's why people don't like them. It's worth mentioning that, you know, they actually function a little bit differently in the beta than that they were polled to enter the beta. So I don't know if people kind of salty about that. Um, there are a lot of players suggesting to totally scrap these deflect prayers and instead go with withstand instead. So withstand from Jagex kind of was proposed to work like this. It gives you full protection from any attack style. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I can't read. Full protection from an attack style, 40% in PvP, but reduces your defense by 33% in all styles. In all styles. I think that 33% defense reduction in PvP on top of already lacking defense boost as part of the prayer book is too much, especially for higher defense accounts. You're going to be taking a lot of damage, even on prayer. Um, and it's probably even higher than the current deflect prayers. So, again, just a reminder to everybody it doesn't matter what you're praying, your likelihood to be hit is just as high. So the protection prayers literally mitigate the damage, but they do not increase your defense bonus. So if you reduce defense from just being on Ruinous Powers, and then further reduce defense with these overhead protection prayers, uh, you got like no defense. Not no defense. Okay, you get what I'm saying. It's really really less. So I think personally there are a lot of different ways to go about balancing this, but the main ideas thus far have been leaning towards, trying to reward a player for using the proper overhead protection while punishing a player who gets the overhead protection prayer incorrect. So while I think it could technically work differently between PVM and PvP, it'd be nice if there was a single solution that worked for both. Overhead protection already works differently between PVM and PvP. I don't think it would be that big of a deal. But I think for PvP balancing, I would caution against one extra thing, and that would be extra damage. I see all these people saying, oh, you want 10% bonus damage if you're hit off prayer? No, you don't want that in PvP. That is too much. That is way too much. I mean, if you make it 5% extra bonus damage, Is that even going to make a difference? I mean, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I mean, remember, stuff is rounded down, so I don't really know if it's going to make that much of a difference. So I would caution against bonus damage. Probably better ways to do it. Here are two ways that I think could be okay. And just want you to note when I say off prayer here, I mean if you have melee up and they hit you with range, right? If you have no overhead up, you're not going to take, you won't be affected by this if you don't have any overhead on at all. So one option is 100% damage reduction in PVM, 40% PvP, and only your off prayer style defense rolls are reduced by 20%. So if you're praying melee, um, and someone hits you with melee, uh, they're not hitting against a further reduced uh, defense because you're praying melee, so you should get your full defense roll of melee. But if they hit with range, you're going to have reduced protection against range because your range defense roll will be reduced by that 20%. So that's essentially what that means. You're not going to get punished for praying the right thing. So it's great. That was difficult. That was a pain for PVMers. Why should PvPers have to deal with that? That doesn't make any sense. Another thing that could be interesting, people might not like it because prayer drain's also relatively high compared to the standard prayer book. Maybe rightfully so, but whatever. Is 100% damage reduction PVM, 40% PvP, and any hits taken off prayer reduce your prayer points by 20% of the damage taken. So it's kind of like a combination of withstand and absorb. Um, yeah, absorb. Basically, you protected 100% from PVM, but um, any mitigated damage, there was some percent that was taken off your prayer. So it's kind of like that, but it's only for off style hits. So maybe a combination that would be cool. I don't know. Devs will probably figure it out. All right, Vindication. I hate this prayer. I fucking hate it. So the current version of Vindication works like this. So heals the player by 50% of their base prayer level if they fall below 10% health, draining their prayer points fully and dealing 10% damage for the next attack. And the damage bonus is only applied for 6 seconds before wearing off and can only be used for one hit, of course. So for reference, redemption works like this. Upon being hit to less than 10% of hit points remaining, or upon taking any hits, including zero damage when at less than 10% health, redemption will drain the player's prayer points to zero and heal the player for 25% of their prayer level rounded down. So heals more than Vindication. So Vindication does not heal as much. So Vindication is kind of like riskier but more rewarding version of Redemption to satisfy the theme of the Ruinous Powers. But that extra damage thing kind of made players feel obligated to try to capitalize it to increase their DPS. Um, it's not necessary to do that, but I think it's just not a fun thing to feel like you have to try to do it. I think that was the argument from the PVM side, but let me just talk about the PvP side. So, use of Vindication for PvP is mostly impractical. Like if you're using it in PvP, you're most likely um, you're most likely either trying to spec tab, which you can't really anymore, but what you can do is Darok's Axe tab. And basically what this is when a player intentionally reduces their own HP with a self-damaging item like a locator orb to maximize the damage potential of a Darok's Axe hit. So what they do is they have full control over when they activate the effects of Vindication. They whittle themselves back down to 1 HP, drink your prayer potion, get Decimate on, and go for the 100 plus HP stack, and then teleport out right away. So the player actually using this is not putting themselves in any danger at all, unless their opponent has a Gmaul spec that they can just throw out there. Because typically after that, they throw the axe, they tab. So if the opponent venges or wants to do a counterattack, they can't because they just hit them. So when you go for this is typically in the cooldown time of your opponent's attack. So if your opponent like literally like just spec'd you, you can orb down, activate Vindication, prayer pot up, decimate, hit him, tab. To be fair, it's a lot of things you got to execute in a very short amount of time to be able to pull it off, but you could pull it off. And there's no counterplay unless your opponent puts up Protect Melee, which in edge style fights, you're not supposed to do that. Um, but I don't know. It's just not fun. I don't think it's a very good mechanic. Um, there are probably better suggestions out there than the one I'm going to suggest right here, but I think one of the following three would be okay. So, number one, prevent players from using self-damaging effects to activate Vindication. So, just straight up, can't use Locator Orb, can't use dropping chemicals or whatever, can't use rock cakes. I don't think you should be able to activate your own Vindication. Um, Alternatively, if a player activates Vindication and proceeds to attack something with that bonus damage, you should prevent that player from teleporting for 3 to 4 seconds. So if they're gonna DH axe you and you have a vengeance and they totally knock you out of existence, at least you kill them too because you venge. I hate when they go for that cheap shot. It's like, and then they get mad at you if you eat to 100. It's like I don't know. I don't like that tactic. There's no risk involved for that player. Alternatively, and I think probably what I would go with if it was up to me, I would totally scrap the bonus damage from this or any other form of DPS increase and change Vindication to heal 30% of your hit points, so more rewarding, right, than Redemption, but in 3 increments of 10% spread out over 6 game ticks. So basically a gradual heal as opposed to all at once, but also reduce the activation threshold to 8% of your hit points level. So it's riskier to activate, but more rewarding if you do activate it. So yeah, I don't know. Again, probably better suggestions, but that's what I would do. Okay, the vows. These are really, really interesting. So let's talk about these really quick. When I say really quick, I probably mean like a half hour. Not really, hope not. Okay, Fumus's vow. Um, Okay, just something to note here. Just some discrepancy, right? It attacks, it uses your own poison severity to heal your own poison and issue it as bonus damage on your opponent. I would make some changes to this. I would say 20% is probably too high. I would say put it back to 10% because that was what was pulled for the beta. So put it back to 10%. Otherwise, it probably would be a bit too strong. Um, this next suggestion, I don't know if it's physically possible, but I think it would be better. But if you change the mechanics such that you can only apply this bonus damage to the opponent type that poisoned you, it'd be better. So, for example, if Zulrah venomed you, you couldn't then go speedrun any boss with those benefits from Zulrah's venom. Um, and then this may not be technically feasible, but I hope it is. Otherwise, if you want to speedrun anything, it will consist of getting as poisoned as you can and then go trying to speedrun, which is just kind of weird. Um, so I think you should incur only one additional damage splat per attack, regardless of how many splats come from the hit. So, like for claws, there shouldn't be 4 bonus hits. That is really high. That is way too high. That's just a lot. So for Umbra's Vow, how it worked in the beta was attacks during 5% of the opponent's defense up to 50% of their base level applied before other defense reducing attacks. So I would bump this back up to the 10% that was communicated in that Greenlight poll blog in early March because that was polled and that's what passed. So I would do that. And that's about it. I think this one's really good. For this Crewers Vow, Crewers? I don't know how to pronounce that. Right, so it's effectively 1% heal, not that great. I would say, just actually just for reference, right? Soul Split, it worked like, 25% of damage dealt is also removed from opponent's prayer and added to your hit points. So it smites them and gives you health, which is really crazy. I mean that is a big thing. So I don't think we should have that. I don't think we should even approach that. But I think I saw a good suggestion from Addy. He's a real high level PVMer, knows what he's talking about. I like the suggestion a lot. So basically, when you defeat an enemy and have this vow on, you get a small amount of your HP back, and maybe it costs more prayer points when you trigger it. So I think it would make sense. I think you could flick it on in certain instances, and it wouldn't be crazy overpowered. So Glacie's Vow right now, I want to move on to that one. Right now, it gives that bonus damage. It's effectively an extra 2% damage spread out over time, but um, it's either, same tick, max 10% of whatever your hit is, or it splashes and hits a 0. So I'm just saying, with the max hits right now, your your maxes could go up by effectively 10% on any random hit in PvP. And that is just too much. Um, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Like, and I'm pretty sure it's with all the hit splats too. So, um, I'd have to fully test this. I believe it is, but if you have like a dragon dagger, I think it's for each hit splat that there's a 20% chance that you'll have 10% bonus damage. So I don't like this at all. I would change this one entirely. So I would say to create a more thematically fitting version of this vow, I think it would be good if you got a damage boost only when you're frozen. So the damage boost would be calculated to be 30% of your remaining freeze duration measured in ticks. So if you just got frozen and you're frozen for like, I don't know, 30 ticks or something like that, or or less, 30% of 30 is about about 10, maybe 9. So you get 9 bonus damage on whatever hit you did next, um, because you're frozen. So basically, when you're frozen, you do more damage to your opponent. So I think it'd be cool. I think Deep Wildfights would get interesting as soon as you're frozen. You flick on this vow and you start making your opponent pay for it. So I think it'd be cool. Um, you know, would probably be a bit of a buff to PVMers in the wilderness that are on this prayer book, which I don't know how PvPers feel about that, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. I think it'd be better than just like straight up 10% damage if you get super lucky. Like I don't like that. Okay, so prayer level requirements. This is the big finish. This is how I would rebalance stuff if it was totally up to me. Probably don't have a huge opinion on this bottom row. Could probably shuffle these things around, especially these first four. I don't like think it's that important. But um, some of the big things that I would definitely change. Um, the vows, I would just make them all the same level. I don't know if any of them should be necessarily more powerful per se than the rest, so I think they should just all be the same level. It also kind of makes it look nicer in the book. I would say that these offensive prayers need to be in the 90s, like low 90s, low to mid 90s. No compromise there. I strongly think they need to be in the 90s because even after you nerf them a little bit, which I do think they need, at least damage wise, um, they're so insanely strong. And if you're gonna make players go to a new prayer book, you got to make them get higher prayer as well. Like you can't say, oh, if you got 77 prayer, you're going to use all the new offensive prayers too. Like, no, like you got to drive people up in prayer level. Like you got to make people get higher prayer. I think for PvP balancing, it's super important because if you let accounts have those prayers at relatively low combat levels, that is not going to be a fair reflection of how powerful they should be at that given combat level. So making Gambit level 98, I'm not too hard stuck on that, but putting it the highest prayer in the book, I think is okay because if you want that extra accuracy, you should need to get those extra prayer levels. Um, but exactly what that looks like, I'm not entirely torn on it or stuck on it. Just rearranging some stuff so relative position is kind of in line with where it was before. Doesn't need to be exactly in line, but kind of in line is okay. The overheads over the other prayers. Maybe move ancient strength over one just so everything's in line here. It doesn't really matter too much. I mean, God forbid people have to remember to click a different spot. It's not that big of a deal. But these different protect item options in there. This one being a very high requirement at 88 prayer, while this one being lower at 63. I think I said like 65 and 85 earlier. I don't really know. It doesn't matter a whole lot. Just have there being two. There being two gives players more options. If they want that less risky option, but they do want to use a +1, they could do that. But if they want to get super greedy and try to do two, and they have a relatively high chance of losing both of those, they have that option too. I think that'd be a cool design choice. And then yeah, overall, this is just how I would do it. I think making people get high prayer level is good. Like Vindication at 90, Wrath at 89. Vows up to 88. I think that's way too high for what those do. Um, well, given that I changed some of these too, I mean, it's all relative. But yeah, that's what I do. So, this was a pretty long video. I think it's probably like the longest video I will ever make in my life. But I like talking about this stuff. These are like the most exciting updates since I started playing old school. I mean, I played old school since release, and I have not been more excited for an update than I am about Bounty Hunter and a new prayer book. I think it's going to be huge for PvP. Probably, again, probably the biggest PvP updates we've got since the game came out. So, um, if you've made it this far, you're an absolute fucking champ. If you're not subscribed to me, I don't know why the fuck you're still listening to me. But I make a lot of PK content. If you like my stuff, please subscribe. Um, and yeah, if the chapters are helpful, let me know. If you want more chapters, also let me know. I'm gonna cut the video off here, guys. I appreciate you listening, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this pans out. Take it easy. Thanks for watching.